Cool. And hey, have we mentioned there's also $1 million at stake?
The total pot is $1 million.
No, that is not a typo. The prizes are unbelievably generous.
We began with thousands of players. Now only dozens remain.
What a move by Timur. It's over. He's going to live to tell the tale.
And that is enough to take victory in this Armageddon game, Danya.
The CGC knockout phase has arrived. There are those who played their way in, and some are here thanks to their well-earned reputations. No matter who you are, things are about to get very, very real.
Oh my
What a
goodness.
match.
Massive congratulations to Sam Fabiano.
A trip to the CGC finals and a clean shot at the largest first place prize of the year. My friends, it's the CGC round of 16. Who will take the next step to Toronto?
Welcome to the 2022 Chess.com Global Championship presented by Brave. I'm Grandmaster Robert Hess, and it's the King of Gotham, International Master Levy Rosman. Levy, another great day here at the CGC.
Yes, it is. And I just learned that I have a new nickname, Robert. I guess you were saving that up for the hour call that we have before we go live for these shows. I'm very excited. It's been a tremendous amount of fun watching 64 players now down to not quite 16 because we already had a couple of eliminations. What is it? Something like 12 now. But today we have a super exciting lineup of games and matchups for you, as it's going to be the 1 seed and the 2 seed in both of the head-to-heads. And I think we're about to go to a full screen bracket to show you what's been going on thus far, Robert.
Yeah, super excited where we are. And as we get into the brackets, dive into the details, we do want to give a quick shout out to our friends at Brave, who will take us through, be our presenting sponsor for the rest of the CGC, including all the way into Toronto. So we're excited to have Brave with us. And as they join us here in the bracket, we see that, as Levy mentioned, we do not have all 16 players remaining in this knockout portion. Levon Aronian, Wesley So made their way through yesterday. But today, we're at the top of the bracket, Hikaru Nakamura, Leonard Dominguez, as well as they're the bottom left, Fabiano Caruana, Dmitry Andreikin.
Exactly. And it's sort of a dream come true in the sense that when you get 8 players into a group, you seed them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And sometimes you have upsets. On the right side of your screen, in fact, you have a few upsets in some of those groups. You do have some number 1 seeds moving on, but that is really what you are looking for. Is the person who is touted to win a group of 8 actually going to emerge in the final? And today, the answer to that question is yes. And number 1 will be taking on number 2.
Yeah, the top-heavy tournament that we have here will continue, but we do want to remind everybody of yesterday's results because 2 players have already punched their tickets through to Toronto. 2 more will join them. That was Wesley So. He escaped Jeffrey Zhang barely in the Armageddon. Jeffrey Zhang was almost had him, could not quite win the game, and Wesley held on. And then Levon Aronian, Levy, he's looking as good as anyone in this field.
He absolutely is. You see, yesterday we had 2 completely different storylines. We saw Sam Sevian taking some of the momentum that he brought in with the win against MVL. And when you beat a guy who's in the top 10 and really touted as a beast in Rapid and Blitz, everybody starts looking like, all right, when is the Cinderella story going to end? Or are you going to ride this wave to the live final, obviously in Toronto? And unfortunately, he couldn't quite continue the run, and Levon dominant. And he just said, all right, well, I'm the 1 seed for a reason. But on the flip side, you had an absolute barn burner heavyweight matchup where Jeffrey Zhang fought back from a significant deficit and won and forced an Armageddon and was so close, Robert. He was just so close, inches away from making it to Toronto, but unfortunately came up short. If we can have the same level of drama today that we had yesterday, I'm all for it.
For sure. And for some, the clock strikes midnight as you bring up our remaining contestants in this knockout tournament. Of course, we know Pavel Pankratov, Alexei Sarana. Those are higher seeds, or players that might not have been expected to make their way through to the round of 16. But as we look here, and we will see who else punches their way to Toronto in addition to Wesley and Levon, it's all about Nakamura Dominguez and Caruana Andreikin today.
Yes, it is. Wesley, like we just saw, had a nail-biting experience, but he awaits the winner of Caruana versus Andreken, which will obviously lead into the next round. He sits there happily taking, well, I don't know if he happily took care of business yesterday. I think it was more of a relief. And yes, Hikaru, obviously the top seed, the dominant man today, definitely the best rapid player of the 4 that we will have for you, for the audience. But we'll see. That's the amazing thing. We can't just predict things based on seeding. They actually have to play it out. And I think we have a preview, right? We're going to a preview of the specific matchups.
For sure. Look at these 4 players on screen in front of you. We have the All-American Derby. 1 seed Hikaru Nakamura taking on Leonard Dominguez, the 2 seed in that side of things. And then Fabiano Caruana against Dmitry Andreykin. I mean, calling Andreykin a 2 seed feels like it's really not giving him the benefit of his skill set. But these 2 matchups, Levy, I think that everybody has been waiting for them in the round of 16.
Absolutely. And they're very different. They're different in the sense that Hikaru and Lanier play all the time. They've played in Classical Rapid. They've played at St. Louis just a few weeks ago. But Caruana and Andreykin, except for their online games, have maybe played each other just a limited amount of times. I'm not sure where they could even possibly meet. They are at the upper echelon of the game, but generally, unless you're invited to a tournament, you're not really going to see these 2 going at it. So this is the beauty of the CGC, is that if you put 2 of them in a group, that is what happens. They emerge out of the darkness that is a group of 8 as the 1 and 2 seed. And they're very interesting stylistically, right, Robert? Because I feel like Dmitry is much more inclined to mix it up. I feel like Fabiano is a cutting-edge theoretician. He will maybe be looking to put away Dmitry just straight out of some sort of preparation that he finds could be a weakness. I don't know. You probably know a little bit more about Fabiano than me, and you've seen a bit more of Dmitry's games. What do you expect for today?
Yeah, Dmitry is the ultimate grinder, and we see the head-to-head comparison. This does not surprise me. They are tied in Classical. They are tied in Rapid, but Levy, I feel like that last bullet point there on Draken beating Caruana 2-0 in the RCC, a bit misleading because Fabiano lost the second game because his internet disconnected in a completely winning position.
That is indeed tragic. Yes, that should be 1-1. That is the struggle of playing games online. And I kind of look back to that Classical score. I mentioned that I don't think they've played many games against each other. These guys are probably both about 30, and they've played 5 games of classical chess against each other over the course of their careers. They just don't find themselves in similar events. And to be honest, you go back in their history, I don't know where those games are. It's out of Steel maybe somewhere, maybe a Grand Swiss, and a lot of draws, right? So the truth is, Robert, I feel like we don't know anything about this matchup. This is like a total toss-up, and I have no idea what to expect, really. That's what makes this super exciting.
And in many ways, Dmitry Andreykin is the unsung hero of online chess. The guy is winning Title Tuesdays left and right. He made it to the final, the grand final of the Rapid Chess Championship, but before ultimately being eliminated by Jan Nepomniachtchi. But today's big matchup, the one that is starting first, is between Hikaru Nakamura and Leonard Dominguez. And as we look at this head-to-head, look at how many draws they have in Classical and how few draws they have in Rapid.
Lanier is a very solid player. And in classical chess, that is really an important asset to have as a skill. He's been consistently 2750, 2760, 2770. And it kind of is not super surprising because I feel like if they played a lot more games when Hikaru was a bit younger in his career, throwing out King's Indians at everybody, then maybe there would be more wins and losses. But it kind of makes sense because I think Hikaru toward, well, I don't want to say the end of his classical career, but he obviously more recently has played a lot more online and more rapid and blitz. He's been a bit more of a solid player, kind of having what they call maybe a professional repertoire with some of these Queen's Gambit declines. But we saw that in their rapid head-to-head. It's 8 wins, 4 losses, 1 draw. There are almost no draws. And that's what makes this intriguing. Because every time Hikaru plays Lanier, I pay attention. Hikaru might have a bit more of a provocative style. Lanier is rock solid. But when you get them into faster and faster time controls, Hikaru definitely has an advantage, and we'll see what happens today.
For sure, but I know Leonard Dominguez is taking online play more seriously, and well, we want to remind everybody of their votes. Our community got involved before the event began, made their predictions, and I just have to say outright, Levy, these predictions here, ridiculous.
Yeah, ridiculous. I think if Lanier had a Twitch channel, this would be like 75-25 at least. I think he would get 5 times as many votes. I just think that people expect Hikaru to win. And back when we did the bracket analysis, bracket preview with Danny and with Naroditsky, I kind of said the same thing. And you put Hikaru in a group, you're like, all right, he'll take care of business. I'm just going to go over here. You really don't have to monitor him. But Lanier is a perfect adversary for being a second seed. He's been amazing in this event. He took care of Eric Hansen quite convincingly. And if he shows up today and plays that style and neutralizes Hikaru and doesn't get too low on time, and I don't see a reason why he can't be the one going to Toronto. But obviously, 95-5 is a bit insane.
Yes, and same 78% for Caruana. That felt like a lot, but here we see to remind everybody of what the format is, because you said when Hikaru plays, he's the favorite, but this is an event with a 15-minute plus 2-second increment. So it's not just bullet chess, blitz chess. It takes a while to get down to time trouble, and Leonard Dominguez is extremely well prepared. He is not going to go down in any game without a tremendous fight.
Yeah, 5% is crazy. Like, 5%, you can maybe bring in the qualifying round or something along those lines. It wouldn't be the first time that we saw an upset, but yeah, just an overview of the format once again. They play a best of 4. First to 2.5 out of those 4 games does advance, and otherwise they have a bidding system for the Armageddon. As we look at Hikaru and Lanier, you would not think that they are both about to start a very intense rapid game. Lanier certainly looks like it, but there we go. Game face and D4, move 1 from Hikaru. Will we get a quick? Yeah, there it is. Queen's Gambit accepted. This is a Lanier specialty.
It's funny because I knew you were going to ask the question, and I knew that Lanier would answer it before we even had a chance to show things. Lanier takes on C4 in the early stages of the opening very often when his opponent plays D4. It's a solid approach. He quickly strikes the center with C5. So as we just get this match underway, Levy, do we think that Lanier is going to have any opening surprises? Or, as you predicted, QGA is what is expected, QGA is what it is?
No, when you play Queen's Gambit accepted with black, especially in this line, you are very much a sitting duck. I mean, that's a bit of a stretch. Sitting duck has a negative connotation, but here we go. We see D5 right away from Hikaru. And this is one of these moments where, and look at this, B5. Wow.
Not even taking this knight on D5 back. The sign of, what is happening here?
Well, have you ever seen this? What is going on?
I'm about to click the Game Explorer because I have no idea. And this position, apparently at high-level games, has only happened a couple of times. There is a knight that has been able to be captured for many moves. The point, everybody, is you don't want to take it. You open up the E-file for this rook on E1. So that is why Lanier said no. And it was bishop B4 and bishop G5.
Oh my God. F6! Okay, this is crazy. They are just throwing out theory left and right. And what I was going to say is that when you play the Queen's Gambit accepted with black, you're a sitting duck. You are basically waiting for white to instigate with you and try to pull you either into 25 move deep water or what's happening here. Hikaru's trying to take Lanier completely out of known theory. And the problem is for him right now, Lanier is obviously very well prepared. He's playing a bunch of absurd looking moves instantly. That's a bad sign.
Yeah, this has been already a fascinating battle of opening theory. Let's bring up the analysis board because a lot has happened. We don't want to deprive you of those little educational tidbits. So it all started around here where after A6, playing on the flank, trying to get B5 in, Hikaru decides to strike in the center. And Levy, at this point, B5 is already a clear indication that Lanier has no interest in taking this knight on D5.
Yeah, absolutely not. First of all, knight c6 is already a secondary move, I believe, several moves ago. Black generally plays a6, e6, c5, but really waits a lot of the time to play the knight to c6. But Lanier did it instantly, which I know he does, and I can't say I've ever seen d5 in that position. You see d5 frequently, and e4 as well, but this is a completely unique thing. I've never seen this in my life.
And it makes sense that he wouldn't take on d5 at any point here because after you take, all of a sudden, white's pieces venture into the center, attack the knight, the rook is over there, the f7 pawn is weak, and that's why I played c4, cutting the bishop off from the knight. But here come tactics, and after e takes d5, this would have been a big problem with rook e1 check about to happen, the king stranded in the center.
So now probably what's coming next as we see Hikaru taking a bit of a think is an endgame, frankly. They already have traded a lot of the pieces, And the question here is Black's c4 pawn an asset or is it a liability? Because I'm going to tell you right now, Hikaru better hope it's a liability. If Black is able to trade it, he's going to get very quick play with the king going to safety and the rook coming in, and maybe Black is already playing for some sort of advantage potentially.
And a big issue is that rook c1 is not available because knight d3 with a fork of the rooks, and you really do not want to bring your e1 rook to c1. That makes the e4 pawn more of a target down the line, and knight d3 is still going to be available at some point. So it looks like a very interesting start to this game by these players, Fabiano and Andrejkin. They will have their game get underway in just a bit. So we will try to catch the start of that game as Hikaru, he's deep in the think tank. So here we go. We have these two starting out as well.
Yeah, one funny thing about that line, this move b5, you said it was only really played in one high-level game, and I know we have this game up on the screen, so I'll save that. But chess is so fascinating how nowadays you can just see data instantly. Oh, this was played in Budapest 2022 and this day of this month, and this is what the players were wearing, and this is what they had for breakfast. Back in the day, you used to have to wait for publications to come out. Wow, Winauer! This is such a... Robert, you and I once oversaw Winauer in Vichy versus Pankratov in that first game.
And that game was as wild as they get. And playing the French against Fabiano Caruana has proven in the past to be a very bad idea for grandmasters. I mean, Fabiano has won a number of nice games from the white side of these positions. And in general, Levy, the double pawns here on the c file that white is saddled with for pretty much the rest of the game, it's offset by the fact that white has the pair of bishops. So what are your thoughts? You're a Caro-Kann player, not a French player, but you're used to these types of structures.
I do not understand the Winauer for either color. If I have to choose which side I understand it better for, it's probably for the white side, because me push pawn, me advance pieces, me maybe win. I'm really not capable of understanding what Black has to offer here, and I think I have played a few times in my life the Winauer over the board, and I've lost every single time. So basically, when I get out of theory, you leave me on my own, it's a disaster. But Andrejkin is one of the other, I think, Russian players who plays the French. A lot of them do. I mean, I've even seen Yan Nepomniachtchi play it, and we see Pankratov in this event playing the French. So it's not dead yet. Okay, maybe in classical we're not going to see it as much, but in these fast formats, it's super, super tricky. But Robert, just like visually, how do you do this, man? You play the French at times, when you're feeling naughty. How do you deal with these positions?
I played the French one time in classical chess, and now I unfortunately have been saddled with a reputation that includes that in my repertoire. But I think in the French, right, you have this very strong pawn structure from f7 to d5. A pawn chain is only as strong as its base pawn. White's base pawn c3 defended, but already d4 is pressured a bunch of times. So oftentimes this rook lands on h4, gets into the attack. You start putting pressure on these pawns on g7, f7, while Black's position is a bit more clogged. So ideally, Black plays bishop d7, castles, and goes for f6, tries to open up the position more and more, but it's easier said than done.
And this is also important because we haven't analyzed, and we don't have that position on the screen at all, which is the poison pawns really variation, when in the Winauer, Black allows white to capture a bunch of pawns and then castles queenside. This is a much more positional style Winauer. It's not super, and now it's going to be an extremely positional game as Andrejkin completely shuts down the center of the board. It's deadlocked. Black is going to try to win on the queen side, and white is going to try to not lose on the queen side while also trying to win on the king side with that big space advantage and those potentially weak pawns. Will Andrejkin castle long? Will he put his king in the corner? I don't know. But visually speaking, I, of course, slightly prefer the white side of things, but that doesn't mean anything because they've just traded one piece each, and you can just castle, and Black will probably castle at some point, and we have many, many, many moves ahead. This is going to be a much longer game than the Hikaru versus Lenier Dominguez game.
Well, speaking of that game, a knight h2 played by Caruana, you know what he wants. He wants f4 and so on. He wants to push those pawns. So we'll see if he's able to get everything here, because if this pawn can get up the board, that would be really nice for him. So let's go back to the game between Hikaru and Lenier, just because that's deeper along here. And let me grab that one. Okay.
I like this. I like this overlay because if you don't realize the names are at the bottom, it looks like you and I are playing. You and I can pretend to sit in the shoes of these great players. Okay, so Hikaru is a pawn up, but he is down more than 5 minutes, which makes me think that Lanier did not lose this pawn by mistake, and he will probably be winning it back very soon. Rook d3 doesn't quite win it back, but it activates the rook and forces white to maybe play knight d1, which is just a very not a pleasant move to make because now you can't move anything. But there's still some accuracy to be had here. So far, though, if Lanier gets out of this completely unscathed, Robert, it seems a tremendous preparation from him.
Right. No, I mean, this is activity for the cost of a pawn. So right now, we see that the knight on d1 is passive, the rook on d3 very active, and there are no more weaknesses in Black's camp. The only weakness was sacrificed, jettisoned, and so Black has all its activity.
Exactly right. Maybe White is going to try to put the rook behind the c pawn and c3, c4, c5 in the future, bring the king over a little bit. That's sort of the plan. Hikaru is not a guy who loses time for no reason, let's put it this way. He's not a guy who's wasting 5-6 minutes of clock time and indecisive. No, he really just doesn't exactly know how to untangle here. He's doing his best. These guys have processors in their brains that are unbelievably fast. So to see him down 5.5 minutes trying to find a way to untangle here and make some degree of progress is very interesting. And it just shows you that Queen's Gambit accepted, voluntarily giving up the center so early in the game, but trying to even win back a sacrificed pawn a little bit later is an opening that requires extreme precision and very, very good memorization. And Lanier has shown that so far in game number 1.
Yeah, no, this is great play by Lanier. His king in the center over here, looking quite nice. And we'll see if that king can dash as well. And yeah, no, it looks like a very nice setup for him as Hikaru continues to think. Have you ever seen Hikaru down 6 minutes on the clock?
No, this is what I was saying. I'm shocked. I'm sure you can find games he's unpleasant in some sort of opening, but he's nearly down 50% of the time.
King f1. But I mean, I think White's moves are relatively straightforward as well. So it's not like Hikaru has to worry about losing this game in a few minutes. It's not that kind of activity for Black. It just feels like, well, I mean, I prefer most of Black's pieces, especially the rook on d3 compared to the rook on a1, but you can't attack another pawn or anything like that.
Yeah, this will be a while. Either Hikaru will find a way to bring his king a little bit, f1, e2, and get out of all this, or Black just has a wonderful blockade. What sometimes happens here with Black is you lose a pawn, and you just get all this activity. You say, I did my job. A guy's low on time, I did my job. But with opponents like Hikaru, you can never really relax. Some in the audience might remember the game that he won against David Navarra. It was just a completely equal endgame. And if you don't remember that game because you don't even remember what you had for breakfast, that's completely fine. Don't worry about it. But Hikaru can win the most equal of positions. Although generally he's doing it from the stronger side of the clock. So 5 minutes down winning an endgame, it's not simple, but 7 minutes is still just so much time. And it's an eternity. And if suddenly Lanier is uncomfortable defending, then he will not succeed. He will make a mistake, and suddenly the extra pawn will be felt.
For sure. So, I mean, for Hikaru, game 1 with the white pieces, you'd really prefer to get a more unbalanced position, something sharper, something that gives a little more fight. But now Lanier's thinking. So I do believe that psychologically, Hikaru can start feeling a little bit better because if you see the evaluation bar, Levy, goes up a little bit there, and that might make Hikaru doesn't know what the evaluation is, but every single move for Hikaru, bringing the king towards the center, trying to activate those knights, it just feels like if there's not 100% accuracy from Lanier, then he's not going to get this done.
I'm sort of confused with the idea here. Is it king e2, bishop b5? What is the play? Like, if, of course, White wants to bring the king to touch the rook and then wanted to play f3, f4, which is why Lanier just played the move g5. And g5 will prevent White from playing f4 himself and removing the knight and then trying to win the rook. And the only reason Hikaru hasn't moved any closer with the king and is kind of staring out the window and looking at the weather and calculating is because the bishop for black is going to probably go to b5 on the same diagonal. And suddenly white has walked directly into the line of attack. Not to mention that Lanier doesn't even have to use the g-pawn as a defender. He could use it as an aggressor with a move like g5, g4. And the extra pawn for white is not felt. It's not quite there. It's much more sort of hoping to survive than confidently standing and playing a pivotal role in the position.
Right. No, it's yeah, that's one that I don't envy either player because for Hikaru, you need to really find everything, a deep sort of idea, a plan to get you some play. And for Lanier, it's like, well, I'm down a pawn and hopefully I can keep this up. That's the goal. So, yeah, I don't know. I think that both players shouldn't be too unhappy, but it's just one of those games where you're going to just dig deep.
Oh, you got to dig super deep. For all the hype and for all of the number 1 versus number 2 seed here, this is going to be a dirty, scrappy endgame grind. That's what's going on here. It's not going to be like our other game where we had almost no trades, but it's going to be whether or not Hikaru can demonstrate that, okay, maybe his preparation was not having him in a situation up 6 minutes on the clock, but he won a pawn and he created enough practical chances, and Lanier was unable to deal with them. But the problem in chess is that you have to make moves. It's not just the rules. You cannot just sit there and go, my position looks good. I did my job. No, every move you actually have to do something. You have to change something on the board. And that is where the variance pops in. I wonder if we are able to see Caruana versus Andrejkin.
Yeah,
or
we can.
You can go over there and see what's going on.
Those are the worst rooks I've ever seen.
What is that?
Those are the worst rooks ever, and yet the evaluation says zeros.
What? It just feels like some modern art museum, like we're supposed, this is the tragedy of the rooks or something. We have to analyze this image.
I think we understand why they're there. He wants some kind of G5 move, and then once en passant happens H6 to be defended. But that's why Fabiano Queen C1, just saying no G-pawn push for you at the end of those variations with en passant, H6 will be attacked 3 times.
And we just saw Andrejkin smile and take a sip, because I think he's smiling at, Jesus Christ, why do I have rooks on H7 and H8? But the truth is, he might still get a lot of value out of playing the move G5. Maybe even right now, at the end of the whole sequence, his queen side could be a little bit weak. And if we follow that sequence all the way down, like G5, HG, FG, Rook H6, blah, 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 blah. At the end of it, there's going to be, and that's why we see A6. There we go. So now the king on A8 is going to, let's see, you can't do it just yet, but as black plays A6, the king now no longer has any liabilities. Wow, queen B2.
Switching gears, it looks like. Just going for the B file. Maybe queen will plant itself on the B6 square as well. So not afraid of G-pawn pushes is Fabiano Caruana.
No, he's not. No, he's not. He's like, do your worst. Do your worst. G5, I guess. Yeah, he'll en passant. Well, you must. It's forced, as we know. By the way, do you have to take, or can you play Rook H1 and rotate over to the other side? Actually, I'm serious. I guess taking is better.
Well, we're about to find out because G5 was just played, and I think your instinct is correct to take en passant. You can also bring this rook over to H1, which will induce the move H5. So I'm going to show that quickly to show you why white would want something like this. Because now for H5, we have a dark square bishop. Black does not. Give me all of these dark squares over here. This bishop can actually just venture right into black's position.
Yep, exactly right. White is asking questions of black on all 3 sides of the board at this point. In fact, it almost seems like black cannot do anything. If I'm looking at this plan, this position, the only plan that I see is knight A7, knight B5. That's it. I don't see anything else, because pushing the G-pawn forward, you cannot. White will put the bishop there. And or play f2, f4. Robert, I don't see anything else.
No, but I guess Dimitri's hoping that he can continue to lock up this position. A bishop on e6 is not always the best blockading piece of a passed pawn, and we are seeing a variation this is happening. But a bishop on e6 can be kicked if there's a knight coming into a square like f4. White doesn't have any knights. So this actually is a full-on blockade here. And Levy, I'm not really seeing how White can crash through. Maybe later f3 and g4, but it's going to be a very long story in this game.
Robert, correct me if I'm wrong. So I'm actually trying to learn a bit more myself about this position, and I also think the audience would benefit from this. In any position, you have to always evaluate what trades would benefit a side the most. And I think in this position, just looking at it, if black did not have a queen, if it was just queenless middle endgame, this is completely like hopeless for black. Because I think the queen prevents a lot of expansion for white on the queen side and covers the c2 square, right? So white struggles to move. But with a queen trade, it would be game over. Andreken would sit there waiting for Fabiano to arrive and take all the cookies away from him. So it's very important that queen on a4 survives. Like a move like queen b5, and I think white is just completely winning immediately.
Right. I think it's a great point, and I was just drawing this arrow for fun. But in all seriousness, if the queens are traded, this white king might just go to g5 and help and put pressure here. But look what Fabiano's doing. He's going to rook back to h1, rook over to b1, and start trying to put pressure on the black queen side. This bishop on g5 and the pawn on g3 stop all of black's play. You need pawns on dark squares to combat a dark square bishop. All of black's pawns, every single one, all 7 are on light squares. This position is miserable for Dimitri. Maybe he can hold, but he will never have an active plan unless his knight can sort of get into the game. Maybe knight d8 to f7, or as Levy was mentioning, bringing the knight to b5 at some point. But this doesn't look very appetizing.
No, it doesn't. When you play e6 on the first move, you are immediately bestowing upon yourself the burden of proof to make your light squared bishop useful. It's called the bad French bishop. And in this game, there are 7 out of 8 pawns still remaining on the board for black, and every single pawn is on the same color as the bishop. Literally. And the craziest thing is only really one of them should move forward ever, and it's the b pawn, because if you play a6, a5, then white will very quickly go trade queens. Some sort of rook b1, queen b5, and you cannot trade queens with black. You just literally will lose the game. That king is going to walk up. In fact, Robert, there is a world where white can play bishop f6 and walk the king to g5 right now. And the king is safe. Like knight d8, you could just take it. It's like, but of course, you should trade queens. But it's just so funny. I think this is just a matter of time. I don't know how you feel, but this is a very nice display so far from Fabiano.
I feel like looking at the eval bar, it's like wrong. You know, it's like this position is so miserable for black that even though objectively it's fine, it feels losing for all the reasons that Levy was highlighting. Queen trade is terrible for black. This king can walk up on the dark squares and into g5 later. Black has no active play of his own. So let's leave Dimitri to this task here, because it's not going to be fun and it's going to be difficult. So he'll probably start thinking. He did play b6 now. Let's go back to Hikaru versus Dominguez, because things are changing over there. Hikaru has pushed his pawn. I just saw this move played, pawn to f4, finally kicking this knight out of the center. And while the evaluation's still hovering around even Levy, it's becoming a different type of game.
It really is becoming a different type of game. This is a very, very spicy game now, and the time advantage is 15 seconds as of finishing that sentence. So, complete turnaround. It was 6 minutes for Lanier. He's finally starting to feel some of that pressure that I was describing earlier of, okay, I did my job. Why is this so difficult now? I did everything I was supposed to do. But I'm still down a pawn, and my opponent is threatening my knight, and he's also threatening straight up a fork. Knight b2 is just straight up a fork. It's equal here because there's probably some tactics. I just don't know where they are, Robert. Where are the tactics? Why is it zeros?
So knight c4 stops the fork on b2, but it does allow this knight to f2 with a different fork, hitting the rook and hitting the pawn. So maybe the move g3, I don't really want to play that move, but I can throw it in, I believe, at the moment. It's a little risky, but the whole point is that you can't really allow my pawn to land on h2, so taking the knight feels off the table, and then maybe I won't lose this pawn here. But Levy, this is getting a little bit sharp, although I guess the knight on d1, another point. Sorry to kind of go on and on here, but the knight on d1 is doing an important job of stopping rook e3 check. So maybe knight c4 directly is acceptable.
It's a very sharp position. I really don't like that Lanier is getting so low on time. It really feels like the game is turning here. All you need to do is give Hikaru one opportunity to find a resource and the right situation to do it in, especially when you start spending so much time thinking, and he will find it. He will absolutely find it.
I just realized this knight can also go for a fork. Knight c5.
Yeah, knight c5, knight b2, knight f2. It's unbelievable. Yeah, so exactly. I was going to say knight c5, but I guess there's this rook who doesn't play any of those moves and just plays king e2.
Very, honestly, good move because he's keeping the status quo. He remains up a pawn. And you highlighted the biggest plus in his position is on the clock. Hikaru Nakamura now up a minute and a half. He was down 6 minutes before.
He was, but rook d8 is a classy move, just retreating, completely retreating, all the way back. No knight c5 fork, no rook d6, e5 stuff, none of that. All the way back, and he's just asking Hikaru, make a move. Do something. And it's actually shockingly hard to do something.
It's one of these big decisions that you have to ask. Is knight e3 available for white right now? Because you would love to trade pieces. If you trade these knights on e3, all of a sudden black's in big trouble. So knight e3, is black going to play bishop b5, hoping for a check against this king and then the activity that follows? Can you at some point take on b3 and play rook d2 check? Needs to be considered, but Hikaru asked the question, and now it's up to Lanier.
Okay, is the best move here like knight b2 or bishop b5? Of course, taking the knight on e3 is hopeless for black. White plays c3, c4, and is just straight up winning at that point. So that doesn't work. What does black do? Oh, this is such a tough spot. Look at Lanier. Lanier's acting like it's Hikaru's move. He's like cleaning his glasses. He has 2 minutes. He's gotta come up with something now. And this is not easy because the next move for white could just be pushing the pawn.
Right. If that knight moves up, goes the pawn to c4, and then it might not stop going forward from there. So knight b2 is interesting. You take away rook d1, which might be white's next idea, and you can also go into d3 square, which attacks the f4 pawn. So knight b2 is fascinating. Bishop b5 feels like a very natural idea as well. Although after bishop b5, there might just be knight d4, and all of a sudden, Hikaru's threatening to trade pieces. And why is it a threat? You're up a pawn. You want to get into an endgame where black lacks counterplay.
I mean, from my eyes, bishop b5, knight d4 looks terrible for black because it expedites the trading process.
Whoa.
And, okay.
What? Ooh. A simple fork?
Wow. Could this really be the solution?
I think this is the biggest difference, Levy, between talking about chess and thinking about the game, because this did not even come close to entering my mind.
Yeah, wow. That was the last thing. I thought knight b2 for sure, but I'm sure knight b2 had some sort of refutation. And knight b2 is one of those moves that you kind of gamble in low time. You play it and you just go, it looks cool. I got knight d3 or something. And your opponent actually thinks. They don't gamble at all. They call your bluff and you have nothing. But, Robert, which pawn do you... Okay, he just takes on g4. Robert, can I be honest? I forgot it was hanging. I just straight up forgot g4 was able to be captured.
I appreciate your honesty. I would take the b3 pawn now for Lanier because I want to have this outside pass pawn, a huge strength in an endgame like this. The knight can go back to c5 where blockades white's passer and attacks e4. So I think Lanier should take on b3 here, but I'm guessing there are problems with opening files and allowing this rook on c1 to get into the game.
Yeah, I can also argue for e4 because it sort of prevents the rook moving on c1 and you have maybe a rook d2 in the future. But I agree, it just feels correct to take on b3. Well, Lanier has 80 seconds. It's a 50-50. And this is exactly how you end up losing to Hikaru in the long run. He just plays all the best moves and makes the position complicated for you, and you lose your 7-minute time advantage. Okay, knight takes b3 is played. He has 1:11 on the clock. He's now down 2 minutes. This is so scary.
I think the issue for Lanier is not his current clock, but you know that these decisions will take 6 seconds, 7 seconds. There's a 2-second increment. Lanier is a very good blitz player, but Bullet is a whole different animal. And you're playing against Hikaru Nakamura, the Bullet chess champion. You don't want any part of eventual e5 and maybe a knight sinking its teeth into f6. So, of course, the rook needs to move right now. But it just feels like Hikaru will keep the tension until the right moment and then start creating threats.
Hikaru might just play rook c2 here to cover anything on the d2 square and ask Linier what's next. But then Linier has time to play a5, a4, and there's no rook a2 because of knight c1. Well, there's no rook a2 at this level. For the average player, rook a2 looks fantastic. I'm just going to win the pawn in the future. But yeah, there's forks all over the board. So he plays rook d1. Wow, just going into this knight endgame, huh?
A non-zero chance that taking on d1 is acceptable. You typically don't want to trade when you're down to pieces. You're down a pawn here as black. But with this outside pawn, it will distract at the very least white's king. And then there may not be enough material remaining to start picking up remaining pawns or creating a passer. So rook takes d1, not the question. But Levy, 45 seconds now for Linier. He's got to start making moves more quickly.
He's got to start making moves. He no longer has any time to relax. I really feel like he's played this game way too relaxed. And that can happen when you have such a success in the opening. And he trades.
And
wow.
The evaluation goes up to plus 1.7. And it's going to fluctuate a little bit here. That was an incorrect decision and one that took him a lot of time.
That is a shock. Are you shocked? I'm shocked at that decision. Because you just, like, there is a very high chance you were just straight up lost here. Endgames are theoretical. They're kind of scientific. They're solved. So you might just straight up be lost here. I'm shocked. He's basically saying, no, Hikaru, I don't think you have a way to win this.
And he could be right because there are not that many pawns remaining. And so if you can trade some more pawns and just keep this white king at bay, he has chances. You see a trade. That helps the defensive task. Now, What does white need? A passer to start moving. A passer over here to start moving. The C pawn is blockaded. The A pawn is free to go up to A4 at some moment just to keep white's pieces frozen. And that's the big thing. So if Linier has calculated this correctly, and I trust Linier, and honestly, Levy, at the Olympiad, everyone was marveling at Linier's endgame prowess, then he knows that he can hold this with right play, but not with 24 seconds.
That's the biggest difference right now, is the time. Yeah, for sure. And it's fascinating that he goes into an endgame down a pawn with 3 completely isolated pawn islands, but the only reason he's not completely lost is his pawn on a6. And he's not even in a rush to push it. It's just there. The second he pushes it, it actually gets a little closer to white's pieces. And white can spend some time walking over and winning it. So he's just going to leave it there. Maybe he'll push it once. It's just going to make it difficult for Hikaru. But now c4. And Hikaru keeps f4, g2, and h2 because he wants a cluster of pawns. All right, there's a5. Linier has indicated he's pushing now.
Is there king f5? He probably could protect his knight that way. He brings his knight back, hitting the pawn. And if c5, where's this knight going?
I don't know. Oh, gosh. 7 seconds for Linier to make that decision, by the way. Not looking good. And by the way, you don't even have to push. You can play king d4, king c5.
Oh, I like the look of that. So, knight f5 check. He played that. He gained 0.2 seconds, so at least he's got some mouse speed. He's got to move. Oh, he goes right up the punch, and that's a bad decision. It's a losing decision, in fact.
Why is it losing? It's
It
just...
appear- Oh, my gosh. You cut the king off.
Yeah, but king e7?
Now it's losing.
Oh,
c6, c7. He can't stop the pawn.
He can't stop the pawn. Wow, what a finish. And Robert, we called it. What a clutch performance from Hikaru from start to finish in this game.
Oh, my goodness. That extra pawn, he had compensation for it, but he didn't have the time to play all the accurate moves. That's what happens in sort of gambits. That is a big start for Hikaru Nakamura. Linier will have to strike back, but we do have another game in progress. Fabiano Caruana with the white pieces. I can't even count the material. Is he up something? There's so many F-pawns. And what is this?
Now he's not. He was up. Now it's 6-6, I believe. It's the weirdest structure I've ever seen. Also, black has 2 passed pawns. The G and H pawns are literally passed pawns.
They're just seemingly more easily blockaded than these F and E pawns. And I believe that Fabiano will try to trade off the bishops because if the bishops go away, then these pawns really start rumbling.
Yes. Robert, I have a question for you. Does white have 2 passed F-pawns right now, or is that 1 passed F-pawn?
I'm going to go with... I'm going to go 2, just for this position.
2, right? It's a philosophical question. I don't know.
Because at some point we want to put our pawn to f6 and then bring the next one to f5. So it just feels like they're both runners that we need.
Yeah, how did we even get here, by the way? Okay, b5 apparently computer doesn't like.
And here's this simple plan. Bishop to h3, f5, push these pawns.
Great band, by the way. Simple Plan.
Unintentional reference.
Yes. How do you stop this by black? This whole game has just felt like all Fabi.
That's why you don't play the French defense against Fabiano Caruana. I said it as soon as we saw it. Don't do it.
Yeah. It felt like a game 4 opening when you need to win with black. It does not feel like a game 1 opening. You play e4, e5 game 1. That's what you do, right? I don't know. So surprising.
I wonder if Dimitri, he plays the Sicilian, he plays the Petrov. You don't really want to play the Sicilian against Fabiano either. We saw what happened to MVL and the candidates. All that preparation just bashed him on the head. And then playing the Petrov against the world's greatest Petrov expert, maybe Jan de Palm, she can stake his claim of that title. But either way, look at these pawns, Levy. This is just straightforward stuff.
This is crazy. This is a race of epic proportions. You have E and F going together. You have AB about to break through on the queen side. The problem there is that the only pawn that will survive the rubble is the C pawn, and it's just not far enough. It's just, white will play CB. White will not play AB, although AB is probably also okay. But I think just F4, F5, E6, F7. Where's the plan here for black?
Yeah, E6, I guess the idea is rook C6 and try to get the rook over here. That might also be too slow, by the way. I can show a variation just very quickly, and we'll go back to the position, is after E7, if you start trying to take these pawns, well, then I believe this king comes up, and somehow this is winning. Oh, because you take here.
Yeah, rook F3, rook E3. Yeah.
Ooh, okay. Yeah. Well, I thought that this would be a mistake, but no, just eat everything and win the game. But that's why Fabiano will take his time. He plays king F4, he'll play king F5, and then push the pawns.
And he does ultimately do it this way. And yes, black gets the C pawn, but it's not good enough. And ultimately, white can even sack the rook on C1, maybe in some position in the future, and promote. So what's going to happen is white will play E6 and maybe E7. And that will be that.
And Fabiano also heading the clock, so wisely using his time here. No need to just push the passed pawns without calculating. Here he goes, E6. As mentioned, C2. White's pawns are mobilizing first. Although, if this kind of situation happens with a trade on C1 here, the black rook lands, G2 next, that could be devastating. So he does plant his rook on C1 in front of the passed pawn.
Patience.
Is it a mistake? Still plus 2.
There's a way to maybe blunder rook C6, king E5, rook H5. Oops.
Oh. G2 played.
Wow. The problem with trying to push 2 pawns laterally is the rook covers all the squares.
Right.
So the rook on C1 defends everything, and the white king is going to E5. You still need extreme precision here.
I think king F5 is just a good move, because the point for black is at some point go G1 and C1, but you lose both of your passed pawns, and then white pushes. So E7 first, and still good, and now completely winning after rook H8. An error somehow.
It's beyond my pay grade understanding why that was a mistake and he had some other way to go forward.
Just bring this king up, right? Even king F5.
Yeah, king E5. Yeah, king E5, king D6 has seemed very natural to me.
Yeah, king F5, king E6. Just bring the king into the game. The king is a weapon in the end game, and there's king F5. Rook G8. Doesn't that allow F7?
G1?
G1? Oh, goodness.
This is you could screw this up, man. This is anything but over.
I'm confused.
Yeah, Robert, I actually don't like this anymore. I don't even know what you play here.
How about rook H2, and if you promote, I sack this rook for 1 pawn. I sack this rook for the other pawn, and then I get a queen.
Okay, but rook H2, H3?
I didn't get any further than that. I'm just making a one-move idea.
Oh my gosh, this is crazy. Fabi's down to 25 seconds. I'm nervous, man.
He's nervous. Look at him. He plays F7.
G1.
Take. Oh, the eval goes to even.
Oh my gosh, he was winning some other way.
And he could lose this. There's a check on G5.
Yeah.
Oh, he's going to make a draw.
Is it? Oh my gosh, if the F pawn was on F4, there wouldn't be rook A3.
Well, actually, there would be. Oh,
it's covered.
Right. So can he take on D5? What's happening after that?
Yeah, Fabi is unhappy with himself because that was definitely winning. But Robert, can we see how?
Sure. And it's a draw. it looks like at this moment here, this is a critical moment already in this day. And all right, I guess F4 is just a winning move. So
yeah, of course. Yeah.
If you promote and do this whole thing, now when we have rook a3 check first, Levy, that's the key. Oh my gosh, that's so deep. The point is that now the king moves somewhere, let's say to b7, and when you get the queen, black queen second, and there's checkmate about to happen because white checks first.
Robert, F4 was an unbelievable move. That you literally had to use your last bit of artillery and rotate the rook over. That I don't think that's findable. I really just don't. What an incredible game. And kudos to Andraken, because he could have went down multiple times. What an absolutely unbelievable finish.
That's just a ridiculous play. So draw in this one. So it is 50-50 here. And we do want to give another shout out to our presenting sponsor, Brave, because Brave means private browsing and so much more. By default, Brave blocks ads and trackers on every page and video you visit, even on YouTube. No ads means up to 3 times faster page loads, faster streaming, and faster playback. It means 35% longer battery life while saving on mobile data and internet bandwidth. For Android, iOS, and desktop, get the best browser for gamers, streamers, and creators. Switch in 60 seconds at brave.com/chess. And we are going to head on out here. The second games here in these round of 16 matchups between Hikaru Nakamura and Leonard Dominguez, Fabiano Caruana, Dimitri Andraken will resume here at the 2022 Chess.com Global Championships presented by Brave. Welcome back, everybody, to the 2022 Chess.com Global Championship presented by Brave. We see Hikaru Nakamura on stream, pineapple shirt, pineapple in the back. And Levy, you know a thing or two about those play buttons that he has in his background.
Yes, I do. I was not expecting to have to discuss YouTube milestones in the middle of the last online round of such a prestigious and wonderful event that leads up to a live final. But yes, on top of also being a dominant chess player, you know, Hikaru got a couple of nice yuku. I just combined YouTube and Accolade all in one. Unfortunately, on these cards, they don't put the amount of subscribers you have on YouTube. But yes, he has quite a lot. And his path thus far has been winning against Vasquez and Navarra. Very convincingly, I must say. The matchup against Navarra in particular was just dominant from start to finish. And I would say in that first game, he did exactly what he did to David Navarra in the second endgame that he won. He is a nightmare to play against in any position where the balance is 0.2 or something along those lines.
Yeah, and it was a shaky start against his first round opponent, because when he played against Vasquez, he wasn't just winning games like people expected him to, and also he probably expected of himself. He also was worse in some positions from the white side of things. So he's found his footing here in the CGC. The rapid time control 15-minute plus 2-second increment, different than his classical chess successes at the Grand Prix and at the candidates. And then here online, he of course has been an absolute monster. But Lenier Dominguez, no slouch. His opponent here, it's 1-0 in Hikaru's favor. That was a nice endgame grind. Lenier needs to be consistent on the clock, Levy. That's my biggest takeaway from their first game.
Yep, that's exactly right. But Lenier is not the guy who maybe, if humanity needs to win one game with white, you necessarily call. I might call Rapport. Rapport is a guy who's going to make things super weird in the first 10 moves. And he might win, he might lose, it might be spectacular. Lenier is going to start the game the way I would expect with e4. There it is. And we are probably going to have a Berlin. And wow, an open invitation to accept the Berlin. So Lenier, Lenier plays this line. He doesn't play the endgame. He plays this symmetrical structure and tries to squeeze. Well, maybe he'll try to squeeze the juice out of the pineapple.
Now that is a stellar reference, and people have known Hikaru Nakamura as a tactical whiz kid growing up and playing along the circuit. But you know, I think he doesn't get enough credit for his endgame technique. He is extremely strong in endgame, and we're not fully in an endgame yet. But you look at the position, symmetrical pawn structure. The game is quite balanced, but Bishop F4 tries to take the game into slightly different territory. If, in fact, Black wants to start trading pieces, dragging the queen away from the defense of the d4 pawn, Black does get to steal that pawn in the center, but White has such a lead in development that oftentimes the player with the black pieces regrets stealing the pawn. So, Levy, Hikaru spending time right now. He must be somewhat familiar with the position. Do you think he's trying to determine where to take this game, or is it a specific line he's looking at?
He's remembering games. He's probably remembering some of his analysis. And it's sort of what we're seeing in the last game, too. Just because he's spending time and potentially even getting a few minutes down on the clock doesn't necessarily mean anything bad. Of course, he is very slowly fading further and further out of frame as he floats off into the land of pineapples. But that first game just basically showed that it makes absolutely no difference if he's down 7 minutes on the clock.
Look at Lenier go. Still in his prep. And I guess, has anyone given Hikaru the nickname Pineapple Express? Can we give him that nickname?
Wow. What so he's Pineapple Express. What was I? Was I King of Gotham? Is that what you called me?
Yeah.
Robert's just dishing out nicknames. Do you have a nickname?
No.
You have a catchphrase as a nickname, right? There's no ain't no chess without has, something like that.
Yeah, that is what the people say. I don't know if it's true, but I do appreciate it nonetheless. And how about this, Levy? Lenier has 15 minutes, 9 seconds. The guy has more time than he started with. He's attacking the queen, trying to drag it away from this knight on e8. You do not want to get back rank checkmate. Of course, Hikaru is not going to fall for that. Is f6 the move? Yes, it is. But that opens up the light squares against the black king.
Yeah, my dog is very intrigued by this game, as you can see. He just got really riled up and just started standing on me and smelling my face, going, "Oh, Berlin, let me get some of that. I want to learn some of these Berlin positions." This is really interesting because you generally don't see such crazy tactics in Berlin territory. Robert, I wouldn't be surprised if the best move here is something like King F8, because I feel like King H8 just seems a bit, I don't know, feeble. Like but King F8, is there Queen E4?
Oh, goodness.
What are we looking at here?
Yeah, that's a double attack going after that black king. And Hikaru doesn't know the position, right? He may have studied it, and he may have this in some file on his computer, but right here, right now, it doesn't feel like he knows every last move. And Lenier is still moving instantly. The eval bar just went a little bit in black's favor after that move, but that's not what dictates if this is a good choice or not, right, Levy? I mean, it's still hovering around even, but Lenier knows this probably like 6 more moves.
In multiple directions, too, he will very quickly know if Hikaru messes something up. But the benefit of playing an opening like the Berlin is that even if you do make a slight inaccuracy, it's very little in terms of an evaluation swing. Whereas in Sicilians, if you play a move that's not good, you might very quickly get a lost position.
But doesn't this feel like a Sicilian more than a Berlin, right? There's like open king, it's a pawn sacrifice. This feels like white has a lot to play for.
It feels like a Karo Khan, but black did not know that they were supposed to put their pawns on light squares. Because generally you have these two like pawns right next to each other on c6 and e6. But in this case, you have them on the dark squares instead. And it does feel a bit problematic. And let's not also forget that white is a pawn down. Like if Lenier does not pull out something in this game, he will probably just lose in the similar fashion he did in the last game. Where if Hikaru gets the pawn and goes back to his base and says, okay, come get me, and Lenier fails, it's going to be 2-0.
That's true.
So far, he's defending well.
And Lenier taking his first huge think of the game, already spent 10 seconds on this move. How could he? But the move F4 is very tempting to get this bishop out of here. But as F4 is played, Lenier just trying to recall his prep. We are going to get the Car1 on Draken game underway. So when that one begins, we're going to take you right there for the opening stage. Let's do that. On Draken with the white pieces, he's lucky to be tied in this match. He's very fortunate that Fabiano didn't put him away.
Yeah. You could also argue toward the end, Fabiano, if he didn't have Perpetual, it could have been really, really dangerous. Fabiano was very, very upset, as you could see on camera. And does that mean that momentum is now on Dimitri's side when you escape like that and you get a free pass for the next game? Or does it mean that you're now a bit relaxed? You're like, oh, I survived. I can sort of do what I want. I don't know. One of two things can happen. Either Fabiano overextends a little bit now with black and just plays a little bit too aggressively, or Dimitri is a little bit too confident. And, well, one of those two is happening right now because we are getting a pawn sacrifice line early in this opening. What is this?
I think they're like knight takes e5 and queen a4 check type of moves here. So that's the point of the variation. But look at Dimitri's face. He wasn't expecting bishop takes b4 there. He's like, what is Fabiano doing? And Fabiano is sacrificing first the pawn back on e5. That was recaptured. Now he's giving up material on c6. So Fabiano, in a sharp variation, seems to know what he's doing, Levy. And I was going to say, even before the sequence, I don't like playing into direct variations against Fabiano. I think you should keep it a little bit more tame and then pounce later.
Absolutely. If the choices against Fabiano are on move 10, I'm going to sacrifice a pawn, and then I'm going to play a super forcing line, maybe he doesn't know it, versus I'm going to play 18 moves of theory, and then I came up with this interesting idea that's quite nuanced, and it's still equal, but that's my chance. I'm going to choose the second one, because choosing Fabiano probably doesn't remember it. It's just kind of disrespectful to Fabiano, I feel like. Of course, that was not on Draken's strategy, but the strategy was more like, this line is quite crazy, and there's a chance that I can catch him, but it doesn't seem to be happening right now. Does white castle here or take on c6?
I don't think he's going to take on c6. Even though bishop h3, to my eyes, not allowing white to castle, and Fabiano playing so quickly, like he entered this for a reason. So if I'm Dimitri, I just castle and then try to figure things out from there. But I think we have to go back to the other game. I understand we just got here. The opening is just finishing in this one. But the other game between Lenier and Hikaru, look at this. Like the last bunch of moves happened where f4 chased the bishop. It had to take rook b1. The bishop had to go to a3. queen a5. The bishop had to go to c5. So a series of only moves. And Levy, Lanier has spent so much time. He's given up 7 seconds off his initial clock. And Hikaru, once again, down a lot of time. And there are a bunch of threats in the position. And Hikaru goes knight d6, giving up c7.
Hey, well, listen, when the options are lose a pawn or get checkmated in one move, maybe some of the audience would disagree of the verdict, but I would probably lose my pawn on c7 instead of getting mated. This still looks absolutely horrifying, though. Like, 3 of your pieces have literally not moved. What move is it?
22.
How is that possible?
Never develop. That's how you play chess these days.
He hasn't moved 3 pieces. Literally, he has. Right? I don't think a single one of them has moved a single time.
You are correct.
How is that acceptable? I'm not saying he did anything wrong. I'm saying Lanier has played such a practical line, very, very difficult, but Hikaru is finding only moves.
And credit to the guy. It's zeros. And I would play the move bishop b3, thinking that I can continue the attack, but maybe there's some bailout, like queen takes c7, and if we trade queens here, I'll just show this line very quickly. It's kind of a funny repetition of sorts.
Yeah.
Rook b8, knight a6. You can't take the knight over here. Why is this winning? Oh, because rook d1 at the end or something? I thought this would just be like a repetition.
Bishop d5 or something ridiculous?
Oh, just
looks fun.
I guess, yeah, black can't really move. So funny you get to a position like this and it's just completely winning when even rook d1 looks pretty good. Just, totally winning for white.
Wow. Look at you trying to find a draw amongst the win, and it was still winning.
We can't all be Anish Giri, can we?
No, Robert, I was so hoping you were above that. I knew what I was getting myself into.
Oh, well, sometimes you have to give Anish a little bit of flack. Obviously, Anish Giri, one of the remaining contestants in this field, he plays Pavel Pankratov on Wednesday, so that will be a fun one to watch. And actually, Anish played maybe the best match of the entire event when he beat Raunik Sidwani. The guy was on fire. He played brilliant chess in every single game, and he just blanked the guy.
Dominant performance, and of all the players in the round of 16, you can argue he has, well, I don't want to say necessarily the easiest, but he has the technically the easiest on paper. He's playing the lowest seed of a group, and that's Pavel Pankratov. Pankratov took down Vishy Anand and Nozhirbek Abdusaturov. So does he get an elevated status with 2 absolutely incredible upsets? Does he suddenly just jump to 2 seed on merit of beating 2 incredible players before him? Or do we just look at the stats, and the stats say that this is not a number 1 versus number 2, and Anish still has to take it seriously for sure. So we're going to see how he does. But I feel like we shouldn't be talking about a matchup that's not even on the screen. We have Hikaru here trying to solve this 20 by 20 Rubik's Cube of a Berlin defense. And if he does, it will be incredibly frustrating, I think, for Lanier. Because how do you get to this position and just cannot win it, cannot convert it?
It's all about this king. I mean, this king does not have Luft right now. So there are all sorts of back rank checkmate ideas. If you can, for example, c6 is the easiest one to illustrate. You immediately drop your knight on d6 because rook e8 will be checkmate if the black queen leaves the last rank over there. So Lanier, 13 minutes, 24 seconds. Hikaru, 6:40. We never see Hikaru down this kind of time, but Lanier is just playing preparation, deep lines, and now he needs to keep his foot on the gas pedal and not let Hikaru out of it.
Yeah, Hikaru finally develops his bishop, because if he hadn't, knight c7 and rook e8 would have just won the game for white. There would have been this crazy line where white can infiltrate on f8, but this is an important move now, because if knight c7, there is rook c8.
Yes, but we have to show why, because rook e8 check. I love your variation, Levy. Knight takes e8, whoop, checkmate in 1. Down on f8.
Why is knight c7 also? No, hold on. I'm very perplexed. Why is knight c7 rook c8 not just winning on the spot?
It is, right? Well, or at least this variation would.
Oops. No, this variation. Yeah, wait, was it winning? I thought, or was I relying too much on the lag of our?
No,
it's better, but it's not winning.
Maybe there's rook d1 or something like that, just to.
Yeah. Okay.
Counterpin, and the back rank problems persist, but obviously Hikaru would love this position. It's the best position he's had all game, and it makes his life as easy as possible.
So what should white play if not taking on c7?
Bishop. Can you just play bishop b3 and continue to be down a pawn but have better pieces?
But maybe c6 then.
Yeah,
but then there might be like knight e7. I mean,
that's
I
what I'm
don't know.
looking for. But the fact that Lenier's thinking, obviously at some point he leaves preparation, he needs to use his brain instead of his computer prep. It just doesn't feel like a good trajectory. I really feel like Hikaru should be happy about this. So why don't we leave Lenier to continue thinking? Should we head back on over to the other game, you think?
Yeah, we should. It's crazy. It's the same exact situation in back-to-back games.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally identical. Down a pawn, potentially asking his opponent a bunch of questions, and Hikaru just answering all of them. No problems.
And, Hikaru can give that kind of time advantage to his opponent because we know how quick he makes decisions and great decisions at that. So we'll leave Hikaru and Lenier, and we'll come back here. And the pawn on c6, still a target, but there's now a pawn h3. So the bishop is not leaving g2 anytime soon, and it is black's turn in this position. Levy, I really like Fabiano's position with his activity.
Me too. I like the bishop on b4. I like how it's well protected on a5. I don't exactly know what white can even do here. Maybe slow expansion on the queen side with queen c2, but he already played queen c1, so he's obviously not interested in playing queen c2. Otherwise, he would have played queen c2. Knight b5, yeah. And okay. I don't know, can you take it? And just, like, yes, you're improving black's structure, but maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe there's a way to get at those pawns, but I wouldn't be so sure. Maybe knight e4, but then black is going knight d4. I don't know. I don't know what to play here.
I don't think you want to see the knight land on d4 as you're indicating. So knight b5 cb, that feels wrong because black's pawns are faster. You have a rook behind the b pawn, then you could push to a4, and it just seems like you're handing black a very fun position. Although the long term with these pawns in the center could be nice for white. So it is really a difficult moment for Andreikin, and I'm not surprised to see he's down 2 minutes on the clock.
Yeah, I had an idea to go knight b5 cb and then d4 d5. I don't know if we can put that on the board. Let me just see how bad that is. But knight b5 cb and then d4. But is the best move there bishop c4? I really wanted to play to try it like this, but I'm sure. Yeah, it's bishop c4, and black just doesn't get blockaded, which is very important because if black actually allows d5, I think white has a completely reasonable position. I don't know, like h6 d5, just something like that. Yeah, I feel like white can actually push forward quite a bit here with some space, but bishop c4 and you just shut white down. Instructive moment that you shouldn't improve your opponent's pawn structure, but yeah, I don't know.
I don't think Dmitry knows because knight d4 is such a huge threat, trying to jump into b3, but also take this knight and remove the guard with a fork on e2. So, Dmitry is not enjoying this position. I mean, look at him. He's calculating. He's clearly focused. And I feel like 2 games in, Fabiano has shown just good play right after the opening. And I just think he hasn't had a bad position thus far.
Yeah, but I just realized that I've been very hesitant about this entire position because I forgot that Dmitry didn't lose game 1. This whole time I'm like, oh, what's Dmitry going to do here? And the truth is it actually doesn't matter because he didn't lose the first game. So if he kind of does nothing and this game just liquidates, well, he tried something. It didn't work, but it's an equal match. And I'm just still in complete shock that he managed to make a comeback in the last game. He actually is under no pressure to win this game. So yeah, maybe it's not as bad as I thought. I was actually very down on his position, but maybe he can find a way out.
Yeah, that is the nice thing. Not a must-win scenario by any means for Andreikin. The same might not be able to be said for Lenier Dominguez, who lost game 1, and if he doesn't get game 2, he could be eliminated after just 3 games here in the round of 16. But Levy, I mentioned the clock 2 minutes ago. Now Andreikin down to 7:25. It's ticking. His position's not really clear how to proceed here. I think if I were Andreikin, I would try to find a way to liquidate and force pieces off and try to ensure I can make that half point.
It's an interesting. Wow. So you're already saying it's time to consider some sort of bailout rather than trying to find a way to play for advantage? You think black has basically proven that the position is completely stable, and in the long run, only king h2 after 2.5 minutes of thought is not a good sign. Because if this was bullet, you play king h2 instantly.
Right.
So, wow.
Knight d4, anybody? It's threatening knight. I mean, look how quickly Fabiano played that. Knight e4.
Whoa. Look at him take a sip. I like that confident sip of water. Like, yeah, you would have thought, but is he just worse here?
What is he confident about exactly?
So I think if knight b3, he's going to play something like queen f4, queen e5, right? He's going to go for... That actually looks great. So knight b3, queen f4, knight a1, queen e5. Doesn't that just look...
We'll show this on the analysis board. So knight b3 hits the queen and rook with a fork. The queen jumps out. If you take this rook on a1, there's queen e5, and Levy called it, threatening checkmate. The only way to stop it is f6, but you drop first the bishop with check, then the knight in the corner, 2 pieces for the rook, a winning position for Andreykin. So knight b3, queen f4, and I wonder if you could throw in f5 doesn't... Well...
Maybe.
It's a risky choice, that's for sure.
What if you play... Nope. I thought I had an idea. I don't have an idea.
Maybe it's simple chess, just f6. Just blunt the bishop. The rook is still in attack. If the rook leaves the a file, a4, a3 happens before you know it. And we're not seeing this because Fabiano started with the move after knight for h6. Queen f4 played anyway, and it's back to an even game.
Fascinating. So, okay, Dimitri only did this entire sequence because of that line with queen e5. It's the only reason that he played that at all was because queen f4, queen e5 existed. And it's interesting that Fabiano didn't even go for the fork and decided I'm going to stop h6 altogether. But now I guess knight takes e2 is even not working because queen e5 and there's some sort of lateral hit on the knight and there's mate and e6 is hanging, which more than anything else is the problem. So
rook b5? Should that be it? You're scaring me with queen e5.
But then knight f6, no? Or is that endgame not a problem?
Oh, that looks gross. How is this anything but terrible for black? Just give away the knight. So we get this position. Does this really just say even? Like point 0.2, 0.1? Are you serious? This is gross.
I guess the a pawn is a huge asset for black. Really, that's all it is. Because if the a pawn was on b7, this would be miserable for black. I think in the long run, a computer would maybe hold for black, but I think as a human, it's very very hard.
All your pawns are so weak.
You have 4 pawn islands. It's extremely impressive to have 4 pawn islands when you have more pawns on the board than you don't. Meaning you have 5 out of 8 remaining, but you have 4 pawn islands. That's super impressive.
Well, we'll leave Fabiano in this difficult moment. We'll see how he handles the threat of queen e5. It's a really big choice now, and he looks like he's a bit nervous. Let's go back to Nakamura and Dominguez. That one has changed quite a bit. There is a pawn no longer on b7. So in the last few moves, after the bishop developed, retreats, knight e3, just threatening both the bishop on f5 and rook to d1. That's why the knight came out to e4. But then that allowed Linear to grab a pawn on b7. And here we are. Maybe I was wrong. I'm perfectly happy if I am incorrect that Hikaru knew this variation more deeply than I gave him credit for.
I was actually about to offer you a conspiracy theory. I'm very glad you started with that, so we're sort of on the same page. I have a theory. What if Hikaru has a read on Linear, and he knows that if he goes into ultra deep water with Linear, but pretends like he doesn't exactly know what he's doing, and gets down about 5 or 6 minutes on the clock, Linear will relax. And in that second phase of the game, Hikaru will immediately turn up the speed, and Linear reacts poorly to that. What if that is Hikaru's read? It could be a complete coincidence. 2 games in a row, we have the exact same situation, Robert. But what if this is a strategy? Could that actually be what we're looking at here?
It is viable. Some people do slow down in that opening stage just to present an image that they are not aware of the best continuation. So that is certainly possible. And I think that Hikaru has done a tremendous job with the opening, with the difficult moments that arise, and then after the opening especially. That's been his best part, because in this game, we're getting a repetition. If the white queen were to leave, this queen lands on d2, threatening the rook, threatening the knight, threatening queen f2 check, and then white might just lose. So the only reason queen d2 is not available is because the queen needs to protect the rook in the corner, and we may see a kind of draw by repetition between Hikaru and Lanier.
And Hikaru was never in trouble in this game. The only thing that made us think he was in trouble was the time usage. Time usage aside, he played basically a perfect game of defense. He just absorbed what could have been a dangerous line of preparation. But when you give him 15 minutes on the clock, then he will just neutralize. It's not going to be 3 minutes. It's not going to be 1 minute. It's 15 minutes. And, well, he's barely even down on time anymore. So that is my conspiracy theory of the day. But we'll see what happens in the next 2 games.
Yeah, it looks like this one might just become a draw instantly with a queen a7, queen b7 shuffling. And Lanier, he's calculating. He might try to figure out if his queen can go anywhere else. I just don't see it. Queen takes c6. There's already queen d2. Your rook's under attack. Your knight is going to be loose, as you mentioned, all these threats. So what can Lanier do besides queen a7? I wouldn't want to venture into queen a6. It just feels like you're risking more than any potential reward.
I absolutely agree, as we have for the second game in a row. Finally, about 15 to 20 minutes after the game began, Hikaru is finally up on time again. And I think this happened in the last game as well, around 4 or 5 minutes on the clock. So, yeah, there we are.
Well, I'm looking at the other game as well. They're just going down the variations we were discussing. So let's stay here for a moment, just because not too much has happened. The queens were traded in the other game. But Lanier has a big choice. He either makes the draw on the spot with queen a7, allowing the repetition. And, all right, Hikaru, I think, is just going to be happy with splitting the point. And there it is. The draw is in the books. Hikaru leads 1.5. And Dominguez, he better figure out what to do if he gets white in game 4, because he needs to survive game 3 with black before we get there.
Absolutely. That's extremely frustrating. You cannot beat a player when he plays like that. Hikaru has been so far untouchable in 2 rounds. Just completely untouchable. And we've seen this before. Anish Giri showed up against Raonic Sedwani. It was never close. Levon Aronian, Sam Savion. It was not close. You did not have a matchup like Wesley versus Jeffrey, which is a main event that we all would pay for pay-per-view out of pocket to see. You sometimes just have a situation where a guy is in great form and there's nothing the other guy can do. So Lanier has to turn it around in the next game, and most certainly by game number 4. What's going on in this one, though?
Well, there's a pawn hanging on f6, but the pawn e2 is loose, so e3. White's pawn structure is obviously better, but is there going to be an a4, c5, a3, and even if black loses a pawn, you have some serious potential with your passer running down the flank.
Yeah, I kind of am shocked by the willingness to enter into all of this territory from Fabi. We looked at this endgame and you called it gross, to use your word. But I guess he just thinks that the activity is sufficient. And King G7, and it's one of the ugliest pawn structures of all time in any endgame, but there are enough dynamics, I think, to make it not completely lost. Like, what if Bishop C5 here? I just don't. What if Bishop C5, D3 to D4?
You probably have to do that, because what else is white going to do? All of black's pawns are defended. And C5 followed by A4, that starts to look like it's more fun for black despite the structure. All right, the aesthetic is off, but the pawns can push. So Bishop C5, maybe Rook B5. Please trade me on B4. That gives me a passed pawn. But that also gives white some chances to get active.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Exactly right. Now, black cannot take on C5 here. Just in case anyone is confused. No way.
Just to show how bad that is, what is it? Oh, it's only plus 0.5? It looks so bad.
Yeah, playing chess with an eval bar is just kills the instructive value, because the beginner will be like, no, coach, you're stupid. It's 0.5. But no GM will play bishop takes c5 in that position. No. Long term, you have nothing. Look, they're calling the cops outside. I don't know if you can hear that. Literally, you can hear cops being called because somebody considered the move bishop takes c5.
Rook b5 just feels so much more logical. If white ever takes, there goes this pawn, and now black is better, and it seems very clear because you have an advanced passed pawn. So rook b5 is, in fact, Fabiano's move, and only after this pawn goes to d4 would I calculate bishop takes c5. I do not want to give all activity to white, but now if we okay, I thought I was doing that, and I was like, I actually didn't pick up the piece, Levy. You know when that happens? When you like go to show something, and then it's taken out of your hand? That's what Fabiano did with bishop takes c5.
Yep. Now it's a different story because white does not land a rook there that will actually just dominate the entire board. Right? Fabi's got the rook there on b5. His king could also slowly walk over to d6. Who is happier here, by the way? Who's happier in this position?
Fabiano, because of the clock.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can trade with rook a, and now he's got an outside pass pawn with a rook behind it. So if Dmitry is not careful and his king can enter, then black has some chances. But then you look and can't enter here, can't enter here. If you get even a c7, you can't enter there. There's nowhere to go forward.
And one of my favorite things to do in positions like this, when I used to teach, young kids, it would be, how do you get the white king to f4 in 3 moves? Blows their mind. They just don't understand. Right? The king doesn't have to move to get to a square. Sometimes you can play g4, get the king to f4, and white can certainly be better, but black is totally still in the race to potentially get the rook out from a4 and b3 and a5, a4, and there's still possibilities here for sure.
Yeah, I think it would require some maneuvering. Bishop f3, bishop d1, rook d4, blockade the pawn with the bishop. It's a long story, and it's not like black is just going to allow all that to happen without gaining some play of his own. So f5 was Fabi's choice. He clearly wants to bring his king close to the center, although there might be a moment where you regret bringing your king too far. And okay, this feels, Levy, like not a draw offer, but an acknowledgement that the position is just even.
Well, is it? What are the next few moves? So FG, right? HG, and then I still want to play a little bit. I want to move their pieces. I don't want to move my own pieces. But what happens even if the black king gets to e5? So what?
Nothing.
Then I play f4.
Nothing happens.
I guess there is just, you're saying the white rook really shouldn't move and the black rook shouldn't move and nobody should move. That's what's happening.
Right. And maybe you play rook a6, try to free up the bishop, but after rook a6 is bishop f1 to kick the rook. Whoa.
Whoa.
Oh, I actually like that.
He's not even taking.
That was clever.
Rook
Move the
C8.
bishop. Now the rook is active, and I think then we start slightly preferring black's position, even though we know it's still an equal one.
Yeah, if black has an option to just do this actively, then this game will end much faster. But so I guess now if bishop b3, I don't know. I guess black is not going to play bishop b3. It's just going to.
Well, Fabi can draw if these pawns come off the board, and we take the bishops off as well. But even without, that would be a draw, right? Rook and 3 pawns, these 3, versus rook and 2 pawns, those 2. That is a theoretical draw and quite an easy one for Caruana.
Yeah, Fabi has 4 pawns, none of which work together at all. But the benefit, and this just shows the inherent asset of having an outside pass pawn in this whole world of endgames, cannot be understated. The pawn on a5 is the only reason Fabi is not just clearly worse. And it's because once it starts running, it's almost impossible to stop. And that's what's making this kind of a mutually frozen position. I'm very curious to see what happens in the rest of this match, because it really does feel like thus far it's been Fabi. And
yes.
Yeah, that first game, he was so close, but good defensive effort from Dmitry.
I think we could potentially see a sort of liquidation here. Like if you go rook a5, bishop c6, rook c8, take here. This is the kind of draw I was mentioning, right? Theoretically, this is quite simple for black, especially for someone of Fabiano's caliber and expertise. So he does, in fact, play bishop to b3, and we'll see if all this happens, and then they'll shuffle around a bunch. But Levy, I know we're jumping ahead a little bit. What opening should Andrakin play, or what even first move in response to Caruana's e4?
Well, that's a good question. I think he should play e5. But if he doesn't trust some of the prep that he plays, then I don't know. He certainly should not play the French again. So I don't know, Robert. Maybe a Sicilian, but that's the thing is he doesn't need to win with black. Just needs to stabilize. So I think e5 is quite solid. It's definitely the way to go.
Yeah, I don't think he should repeat the French. Although, speaking of repeating,
Nope.
Fabiano didn't want to repeat. He could have played bishop b3 there.
Yeah, look at Fabi, alpha male. And she's like, yeah, who you think is repeating moves here? Fabi's actually trying to play for win. Fabi gives a smile, stretches. Look at that. Okay.
Does he want to play king d7 to defend this pawn and then play bishop b3 and a4? That way c6 defended. Perhaps that's what he has in mind.
There's f6.
Never play that move.
Yeah, unless it's to kick an active king out of your territory, then you probably should consider it.
Is there rook g8 here? That's what I was wondering. Probably not. Just bishop takes c6.
I feel like that's, but maybe. And if white has to play f3 or something, it could be annoying. But
I was going for a cheapo. That's exactly what I was going for. Like rook g8, f3, I take. And then check you.
And even all of this doesn't work somehow.
Somehow, like the whole point, everybody's f5, and this is pin, and that would be enough. But you can just move your pawn up, and then after takes, take on a5, and it's a draw. Because black's pawns are so bad. So even if you win a pawn, you're not winning the game.
Yeah, that's the thing about rook endgames and bishop endgames. You're like, I won a pawn. It doesn't matter because white's c pawn is so strong if it gets through. Wow, this is are we just getting a bunch of teasing here, but actually no one's going to play for a win? Because I'm getting really excited that somebody's going to lose this game.
I think Fabiano's playing for a loss. Now his weak pawns are a serious issue. Rook f4 can happen. This pawn a5 is not going anywhere with the king so close to the a file. And rook d4 to d6 looks very scary with a double attack. And Andrakin suddenly has more time, Levy.
He does. Oh, but it's super close. Only thing I was going to say is Fabi's playing like a guy who has a 3-minute time advantage. Fabi's playing like a guy who, if you look at white's clock, it's like, 1:15, black has 4 minutes. No, it's a minute on the clock. This is absolutely a gamble. But I guess he's doing it in a calculated fashion, understanding that, okay, I can play on, but there's not a substantial amount of risk. Problem is you do this until you're down to 20 seconds, and suddenly it feels completely different to play the way they're playing. So we're about to see right now. Well, apparently white is much better. Right, but why? Why is white much better? Is it because some rook f4 at some moment?
You just target these pawns. Good start. I think there could be an f4 and like a rook over to h2 maneuver. That's kind of what you need.
Yeah, wow. Another f4. Remember last game? F4 was the game changer. Now you have f4 again, and then rotating the rook around. All right, there's rook f4. Robert, I think someone's going to lose.
I think it's going to be Fabiano, although he is up 20 plus seconds on the clock. That's huge for his chance to survive because bishop a4 apparently incorrect, an imprecise choice. Don't play f5 here. Huge blunder because of e4. Do not try to trade pawns. Right here, there's a pin in the position.
This is now showing why it's so hard to play with 4 pawn islands in an endgame, especially the further apart they are. Because the rook behind the pawn here for black is just misery. Every white piece is doing something. Having said that, white doesn't actually have a way to attack anything just yet. The time is ticking. And I just mentioned this is going to get really dangerous with 20, 30 seconds on the clock. Rook b8. Wow. Wow. Do you have to go back to c3 here?
Well, there is the threat of rook b4. Whoa! Oh, g4 is hanging. I'm like, what's he doing?
Oh,
but he's just trying to trade everything off with g4.
So well timed. There might have been 1 or 2 moves there for Andrakin, and he missed it. Look at that. He played king c3, preventing rook b4. What happens? Rook b4. And that's good night.
And
or maybe
bishop
not.
d1. But how you can't win this. The 2 pawns for black take care of business over here, and then you're still this one. But king b, he wants to get his king over here.
I feel like it's never quite over. Admittedly, 4 pawn islands are going to be much easier to defend when there's nothing to attack them. So there's a lack of offense, is there any defense, or is defense just a reflection of offense? I don't know. We're not getting too philosophical here. It doesn't look like there's much. The bishop on d1 has to guard the a pawn. Wow,
Ooh.
h5.
If g5, you probably lose as white. So he goes king e3 back. But now there are two separate pawns. You be careful. h4. Whoa. He didn't trade. He goes to push this pawn. So how does he kick bishop c4 to b5? Is he in time?
Yeah. Wow. I don't know.
18 seconds.
Bishop.
King d7. He wants bishop d5 maybe.
Danya in the chat saying he's happy he's not either player. He just gets to observe. f5's a nice move. That cage there built for the king, unable to get in. Bishop d5 might just get to a mutual stalemate. Oh wow, f4, nice move.
But if king g1, there's bishop f3 always available to go after this g4 pawn. So he goes bishop e4 to stop any g pawn moves. Bishop f3 now. Yeah, forced pawn push. Now bishop e4 back.
And he's just gonna lose a pawn.
Wait,
take c6.
Oh, c6. Okay, so why would you do that? But now no more pieces remain.
Yeah, there's not enough here. And let's not forget, the a pawn existing with the bishop on the board is still a draw if the white king gets to the corner.
Wait, why is he letting his pawn go?
Oh my gosh.
Oh, he's bishop d5 check. He's bishop d5 check. It's huge.
Yep.
Oh! Fabiano completely blundered, and Draken spots it instantly. This is over.
Oh, in c8, he doesn't even have to check him. He does it this way. Oh my goodness, this is game over. Yep, forces a queen trade. I am in shock, Robert. Robert, I literally said that was what was bound to happen. You play with fire. 5 seconds on the clock. There is a chance you get burned. And Dmitry Andreikin doesn't just save this game. He wins this game against Fabiano Caruana.
Fabiano Caruana has been worse for precisely 5 moves, of this match, and it was the final 5 moves of this game. He blunders, he loses this one. I can't believe it. Let's go to that moment very quickly here, and it was right here after c7. King g6 was a howler. The point, everybody, is after bishop e4. Now this bishop is pinned. If you take, white gets to queen first. So that was a ridiculously bad oversight from one of the best players in chess history, walking right into the only idea available. You can just trade pieces, start bringing your king over. I mean, there's so many ways to hold this game. He found the one way not to.
That's actually shocking. Yeah, he just doesn't have to put his king and bishop on the same line. He could just do anything. Because
he just moves bishop back.
Yeah, because if white ever queens, then king g6 later. You sacrifice your bishop and king g6. White cannot get to you in time. That's unbelievable. In fact, you're actually just winning, obviously, in some cases.
Wow. Well, that is an absolute shocker, Levy. The players, I think they need a little bit of a break. We are going to take one as well because we need to head on out of here for a few. We'll set things right back up. But just want to give another shout out to Brave for being the presenting sponsor. So we'll be right back for more from the Chess.com Global Championship presented by Brave. Welcome back, everybody, to the 2022 Chess.com Global Championship presented by Brave. Grandmaster Robert Hess alongside International Master Levy Rosman. Levy, we just saw Fabiano Caruana hand that game over to Dmitry Andreikin. So, will the American be able to bounce back in this match and secure his place in the round of 8 in Toronto?
I have absolutely no idea. Those were two of the most shocking defensive efforts, and then ultimately, I don't know if you can really call them swindles. It's not, a swindle is generally when you go from completely lost to completely winning with some tricks. Andreikin just plays the game, and he manages his time well, and so far he's managed his nerves well also, and he's up 1.5 to have when, maybe he wouldn't be otherwise. So I guess we're going to take a look at our bracket here overall to preview what we're really looking at in our matchups today, Robert.
Yeah, well, the winner of the Caruana-Andreikin match plays Wesley So. Wesley waits for a really tough opponent in the next one. And Nakamura and Dominguez, whoever wins this one will face the winner of Duda and Serrano. So no easy customers in the Global Championship. Levy, it's 2 games remain here. 1.5 is the lead for Nakamura and Andreikin.
We have 2 matchups that are 1.5 to half, and this is it. This is the last matchup that is going to be basically online, right? I mean, we're sending folks to this amazing kind of live esports final style matchup in Toronto, and Hikaru is looking around very confused. I don't know what he's
because
confused.
Hikaru just had black. We need to fix the colors here. Linear just had the white pieces, so this game will be ended. There it goes. Game is aborted. So Linear has to get the black pieces this time around.
Yes, that is important. Robert and I, just for the record, we are not the ones start. Robert, why'd you start the game with the wrong color, man? Oh, come on, you had one job. Jeez.
Well, Linear has one job here, and it's to not lose this game, because if he loses, he is eliminated from the CGC. Instead of the Queen's Gambit accepted, we got the Queen's Gambit declined. And you'll notice a big difference. In the QGA, Black takes his pawn and hands over the center. Now, it's a position where the bishops are free to roam. This pawn on d5 takes control over central squares. And Levy, I think, ultimately a pretty decent choice from Linear, who is well-versed in so many different opening lines.
Absolutely. But also kind of strange. Nowadays, you are not seeing the top players play a Queen's Gambit decline move order. It's very much popular at intermediate, advanced, master level of the game, but folks are going to play d4, knight f6, c4, e6, rather than putting the pawns in the center first. There's just certain nuances like the Nimso Indian. But I actually think that Linear did not want to do that. He did not want to play into an IMSO, and we have a exchange Rogozin, right, is what we have. That's technically what this is. And Hikaru playing knight f3, which is also kind of a rare move order. And do you think Linear is going to play g5 and knight e4 like Mamedyarov would if you gave him this position? No, he doesn't. Castles.
You could still do this even after castling, and Mamedyarov is certainly one of the players who choose this style. Fabiano Caruana has played the black side of a position just like this against Mamedyarov. So these positions can get very, very sharp. And once again, Hikaru Nakamura down on time in the opening. And he's played perfectly in the first 2 games. He has been stellar. And as soon as I say perfectly, he makes an imperfect move.
Yeah, wow. He plays knight d2 right away. Why is that imperfect? c5?
I think just strike. Right, the knight on f3 and the queen on d1 are protecting the d4 square. c5 is an idea you want to play regardless. So playing knight d2 feels like you are welcoming that pawn push.
Knight d2 breaks every opening principle in existence. He's moving backwards in the opening. He's moved that knight already. He's not developing toward the center. He's removing the defense of the center pawn. Did Hikaru mix up his lines here? Is that what happened? Like, maybe he was supposed to play knight d2 in a slightly different move order? Or is his engine prep just better than whatever we're offering? Like, has he analyzed this in the cloud and to a much higher depth? Because why didn't he just play like a3 or e3? I'm so confused.
I clicked the opening explorer, and there's only one game that I can see where Black in this position played c6 rather than c5. So I don't think this was some kind of a known prep. Maybe he's coming up with novelties and things like that, but just based on time consumption, I think he just was kind of making a move to stop knight e4, these g5, knight e4 ideas. But c5 is just begging to be played here. As you're pointing out, the knight moved a second time, no control over d4. So c5, and if you decide to take, something like this already looks very unpleasant for the white king.
Yeah, I'm so perplexed. I'm also gonna try. Knight d2 has literally never been played. Like the move e3 has been played in about 99% of the games there. And if you don't play e3 in that position with the knight on f3, you're gonna play queen c2. Oh man. Yeah, Hikaru's looking around like, wait, what happened? Maybe his idea was c5 a3. Could that have been his idea? Because that actually doesn't look ridiculous, right? Because you want to, after knight d2, play c5 a3 somehow, but maybe that position is just bad for white. I don't know how, but somehow.
Black can consider taking on d4 and c3. Black can take on c3 right away and hand white a sort of questionable pawn structure over there. But we are about to get the third game between Fabiano Caruana and Dmitry Andreikin underway. A3 was, in fact, Hikaru's choice. We'll see what Lenier chooses as a reply. But Fabiano needs to take this game, Levy. He lost game 2 there. And another French.
Wow.
And a knight c6 French.
Oh my God. This is shocking. This is not okay, Robert. What? There's kids watching.
Yeah.
What are we looking at?
For all the chess learners and students out there, listen to your coaches. Dmitry Andreikin, I'm sure, is a brilliant coach in his own right, but he is playing something against Fabiano Caruana that he looked at, that he's come prepared with in this individual game. Note that he didn't play this line in game 1. It is very cramped for black. White has these great central control. This bishop on c6 is hardly a bishop at all, right? It is kind of blocked in, hemmed in by its own pawns. So white has the initial edge, but what Andreikin hopes to rely on is the fact that the position will remain closed for a while. He can complete his development and only then counter in the center and try to get creative and get some counterplay of his own.
You got to respect the way Andreikin plays chess, though. He just doesn't care. Like, he absolutely doesn't care. I was not expecting that he would show up with theoretical lines today, but I also was not expecting that he would show up with complete nonsense lines. Like, and the thing is, the top level players have played this, but it's so rare. When you play something like 0.05% of the time, that in terms of popularity, you're just asking for trouble. But he almost feels like he has a free pass, right? Because he's up, just straight up. But Robert, I don't know if you agree with me. He could keep playing like this for a bit, and it might work in the last few moments of the game. But I feel like this is just giving Fabi a chance to tie the match.
Well, I love the feature chat we have here. Imagine how well Dmitry would be doing if he got a good position out of the opening.
I mean, it's like literally +2 in the first 10 moves.
Yeah, it's not good. I mean, that much is clear, right? There is space is white for the taking. This knight on e2 is going to go to f4. He plays b3 so he can play a4 and expand on the queen side as well. And if black is left with his light square bishop and white has a knight, I mean, that's just the worst possible scenario. So
Robert,
knight e7.
This wasn't a Guimard, right? This was knight c3, knight c6.
Knight c3, knight c6.
It doesn't even have a name. I think this opening literally doesn't have a name. It's just...
On my screen, it says French defense, normal variation, though there's nothing normal about this to my eyes.
No. That's what chess.com just defaults to calling something normal out of respect. This is absolutely abnormal. Okay, this is not...
And it only says normal for the super GMs who play it, but when everyone in chat plays it, it's like the questionable variation. Don't do this variation.
Yeah, exactly. I think theory just straight up goes out the window here. There's nothing. Absolutely nothing. Wow. Well, someone in chat could make history. Play this a lot, have success, play it in the candidates. We'll name it after you.
It's a great piece in C6. Love that one.
Yep, so good.
The position is nowhere near losing. I know we're being harsh, but when Levy and I dissect this, we're looking at the quality of the pieces, the potential of the pieces. And by playing knight f4, what Fabiano has just done is he's almost permanently prevented the move pawn takes e5. Because what you can't afford to do is give a piece the e5 square. And particular knight, because if white ever took on f6, the pawn takes back, covering e5. If you take on e5, first goes knight g6, then goes knight e5, and this knight is just a brilliant piece here where you have problems all across your dark squares, and the pawn structure is ridiculously bad.
Yeah, and if you take on c6 here, by the way, for the record, you will probably be arrested. So please do not take the bishop on c6 here.
Right. You're not going after this bishop. That's for sure. There
So
goes your entire advantage.
I saw a comment in the chat that said Hikaru was better. So I don't know how that happened. We should go take a look.
Okay. We will leave Dimitri with this really nice looking position. And well, what happened was after a3, the bishop dropped back to a5, which apparently was not the best choice from Lanier. He should have taken on d4, taken on c3, and then entered a position like this, which is odd. You don't get this very often, but maybe once again you take advantage of the knight and queen's placement, Levy, and strike in the center.
Yeah, it looks like d4 was the critical move there, sort of calling the bluff. And yeah, after d4, what is even white's move? I mean, the computer says knight b1. Like, that doesn't strike me as good preparation. I mean, it's I don't know. Maybe I just don't know anything about chess.
Well, knight e4 would be a better version, but g5 is the counter punch, stopping the pin, attacking the bishop. And if this is your best option, next thing is going to happen is black's going to take this pawn and bye-bye.
Was this a bluff, or did he not actually... I don't know. Like, did he play into something that he had prepared and he had a feeling Lanier would not play the most critical line? Or did he just mix up his lines and got a little lucky? I don't know. We will never know. We will never know.
I feel like lucky is the answer here because the line doesn't look very good. Knight d2. There are positions where you do that, but usually the queen is on c2 first. So I think he mixed up a variation and it just so happens that it's paying off for him.
Yeah, I mean, there's still plenty of life here. There's still a lot to play for. It is anything but equal. The last couple of games, it sort of felt like, here, Hikaru, have this pawn, and if you survive, maybe you draw or win. And this game is anything but that. This game is imbalanced, bishop pair, isolated pawn for black, broken structure for white. Lots to play for. And as you said, if Hikaru wins this game, that's it. Lanier does not get another chance.
Well, Lanier going after the c5 pawn, stopping bishop d6 because the knight can now capture it here. So that was a pretty big moment. And I think white just develops. I mean, e3, bring your bishop out, castle. Yeah. Your pawn structure is great. And this pawn doesn't go... As hard as I try, the pawn's not going back to g7.
What's wrong with queen d4, just for now making it annoying to take back?
Also looks very good.
Yeah, and then e3 maybe. And also, if I get to play e3 with white, I would not hesitate to take your knight on a6. And then all of a sudden, the c-pawn is moving. It looks like the world's dumbest move, and you almost never play a move like that. But in this case, it's actually a great move, I think.
I'm with it. Queen d4 looks energetic, protecting your pawn that's under attack twice and only defended once. So queen d4 looks very, very reasonable. Maybe you just play queen e7 and give up d5 to win c5 because white has no development on the king side. Hey, Levy.
Yeah, but the eval hates it.
But you've been talking to Hikaru? I mean, prepping with him?
No, I would not poison his mind before a game, a very important match like this. And now, what I like to play the game of why does Stockfish hate my move? And I don't know, h5, f5, something aggressive, or is it something more solid?
I was looking at queen e7, but they're oftentimes you also play b6 just to give away a pawn, but get the activity. So for instance, b6 takes e3, then this knight comes into c5, and all of a sudden black is creating threats. You might fix your pawn structure with pawn takes c5 that would kick the queen away. It feels like black is the one gaining tempi here, and white is just reacting to black's threats. He didn't play b6. He played my first instinct, queen e7, which, okay, I guess not quite as strong as b6, but still looks reasonable.
There's also something that white would love to play here, which is f3, if possible, and force black to take the bishop, after which the h-file just looks super, super appealing, but black is going to take on c5. Black is not going to take the bishop.
For sure. c5 now is under attack enough times. So, yeah, I think this is still looking nice for Hikaru. f3 looks like a reasonable choice. Even if knight c5, you start trading pieces. You do have the pair of bishops, and black's king will remain open. So I think we should maybe leave Hikaru for the moment and look at what's happening on the other board, because there have been some pretty significant changes, Levy. Black's pawns are storming down the king side, or at least they're trying to, but white has maximum control over the f4 square and many of the other dark squares.
Dimitri just loves playing positions where all his pawns are on light squares when he plays black. In this game, he has all his pawns still on the board, and 7 out of 8 of them, once again, are on light squares. Man, that bishop on c6 just doesn't enjoy life. And yet the evaluation is equal, apparently. Somehow. Only the chess gods know how, but somehow.
I think that somehow is doing nothing. It's one of these positions where black just shuffles, because some people would play h4, h3 very quickly. And I don't think that's actually the right way to go, because white simply responds with g3, and then will later have this f3 move to pry open the position. So you don't want to send your pawn down to h3, where later in the game it will be a target. It's overextended. And thus, I think it makes more sense to just simply shuffle. What is white's plan here? You might want to play b4. That drops the a4 pawn. So how do you do that? You play rook a2, rook a1, like Dimitri did in game 1. Remember that, Levy? Those ugly rooks in the h-file, and then try to push. But it takes forever.
Yeah, it does. And listen, if Dimitri can get away with this against Fabiano, what can you really say, right? It's just like Fabi's biggest strength. He's even getting a head start. And he's still unable to punish Dimitri to the full extent of the chess law, if you will. Dimitri just kind of plays around, and until Fabiano actually dominates from start to finish and puts the game away without any doubt toward the end, Dimitri will continue to play like this. And this is Fabiano's last game with white. Obviously, we might have an Armageddon, but so it's a very tense spot in this match.
Yeah, and the main thing here is the side that controls the pawn breaks is often the side with the advantage. Now, having a knight in a closed position is good, but the knight has nowhere to jump to. The bishop covers c5. If you play c4, that's a pawn break, but you also break open the diagonal for the bishop. That'll likely backfire and cause white a ton of problems. So it's not actually clear how white proceeds. It might need to be slower, a methodical approach, maybe like I was mentioning, rook here, c3, slow maneuvering. And black doesn't have anything to do of his own, so Andrzej will be forced. He has no other choice but to shuffle.
Yeah, and it's up to Fabi. Will there be a way? Is there a way to play something like queen a5, b4, b5? That looks winning, by the way. Those 3 moves together, they just look like they win. So what do you play? What do you have? Wait, is there? Wait, can you put this on the board? Queen a5.
Okay, I'll do it.
Okay, he plays queen c3. Robert, I was going to say queen a5, h4, b4, b6, and it's a draw. But you have. I thought black can repeat moves, bishop b7 and bishop c6. Oh, there's queen a7. Oh, there's queen a7, and I guess somehow you don't get trapped like queen c6, king d7. Wow.
Well, I know exactly what you mean. King b8, b4, and then b6. That's what you're looking for.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
Just both sides have to go back and forth, and that's just a draw. So the king taking away a7 is important. Yeah, no, that's something to keep an eye on. And yeah, Dimitri's bishop on the white square is going to be an additional pawn. That's true. It is a big pawn over there. And first, Fabiano plays queen c3. Levy, I ultimately think that Fabiano needs to pressure Dimitri on the clock, make moves like rook f to b1, and just pretend to threaten things. There's no attack for black. G3 is not a threat. White has all of his pieces covering the square. Yeah. H3 is met by G3. So it's time to pretend to threaten things.
Does white want bishop c1, bishop a3? Who wants a trade of dark squared bishops here?
I don't like that it allows G3, but I see the merit that you try to gain squares for your knight.
If the dark squared bishops vanish right now and white played knight f4 and g3, white would probably just be positionally winning. It's as long as you don't get mated. I think people are saying Hikaru's game is crazy. Let's go see what's going on.
Let's go back to Hikaru Nakamura versus Leonard Dominguez. Hikaru trying to punch his ticket to Toronto. We know how much he loves Canada, in particular Vancouver. And what in the world? There is a king on f2. What is this pawn structure? let's just go back
Yeah.
to where we left off. It was right here. And he went h4. So he got ultra aggressive. The engine does not like the move because of exactly what Linear did. He said, you are going to have some really bad pawns on the C file, on the G file. And is this worth being up a pawn for, Levy? I'm starting to like Black's position.
Yeah, I wonder, is one of the best moves here for Black to play G4? Like, what is the top engine move here? To just shut down the white position completely? Or is it just to play Bishop F5 and get as much development as fast as possible?
So Bishop F5 is his second best. The best move, of course,
B6?
Knight B8.
All right, I mean, shut up. Not you. All right, there you go. Bishop F5.
Bishop F5 is like the most reasonable move ever. Knight B8 trying to go to C6. Yeah, I see why. That's a good idea, but come on.
Yeah. No. Knight B8 is no. And I was going to make a joke in line with recent events, current events in the world of chess, but we're going to stay away from inappropriate humor. Bishop F5 is a much more natural move. And after that, Knight C7, Knight E6, Knight B8, Knight C6 looks much more natural when the bishop has at least moved, or the rook has moved.
True.
D8, yeah.
The other knight maneuver makes perfect sense as well. And now we're even on the clock. So E3 played, going after this knight. I feel like now Knight B8 is even more logical because the knight's under attack.
Yes. And that ensuing endgame with Black potentially having all the pawns broken apart is not very appealing. Or maybe it is. Maybe Linear just understands chess at a far higher level than I possibly could. But I don't know how much I like Bishop takes A6 for Black. The more that I'm thinking about it, Robert, I actually don't think he has to play Knight B8, but I don't know.
I think he'll play
maybe
Knight
he
C7.
should.
You know what he should do is play one of these moves pretty quickly because he knows Knight C7 is a reasonable move. He played it after 40 something seconds. That's a move he could have played in 15 seconds. And that is what has been his biggest weakness in the match is his time consumption. Even when he's been well ahead in the clock, he allows Hikaru to get right back into it by burning clock at inopportune moments. And Knight E6 is a threat. This king is out in the open on F2. I feel like Linear has good chances if he can maintain the speed.
Yeah, but it's such a tense position. White is going to play exactly Queen F4. I don't know.
Knight E6. I'm bringing that knight right into the game.
You are, yeah. Is Linear, though.
He has to go Knight E6.
Yeah, nothing else, right? It doesn't really... Also, White is threatening Rook takes H6, by the way.
For sure. That's a hanging pawn.
Yeah, Knight E6 makes a lot of sense.
You can even take back on G5 with the pawn and go after the C5 pawn. Right? That's a sitting duck. That's going to be captured once this rook gets to C8. So I feel like Linear is in good shape for the moment. If he plays Knight E6, there it is, and maybe he can play for more. Meanwhile, if we can, we will just show you what's happening on the other board. There have been some trades, and now it's opposite color bishops here. And what if Black does nothing? What if Black just moves back and forth? Maybe even brings this king to H5 just for funsies. What is White's plan?
Fabi is doing his kind of patented head shake. He doesn't like what's transpired. He needs to find something. And if the queen side locks up, there ain't nothing he can do. Andreykin has one of the strangest top-level playing styles I have ever seen. He's kind of like Rapport, but he's almost even more absurd because he's so clutch as time ticks lower and so sharp and so defensively gifted. He's a nightmare matchup. You can never put him away, it feels like.
He is really a solid player. I mean, unspectacular opening play, a very limited access to squares, but he doesn't mind. He is happy to just keep shuffling, and Rook D2 played, maybe Rook D3, Rook C3. I just don't know where White ultimately is going, but I see that Black's king is on G6, likely going over to H5.
Yeah. You can put anything you want on H5. Rook, king. Black's king on H5. Oh, king F1. All right, all right, you want to walk your king. I'm going to walk my king too.
King's going to B2. The Petrosian king march. And it's a good time to do it because Black has no active play. The bishop on f4 just happens to look a little bit better than the bishop on c6. Oh, I don't think I like that move.
Yeah, me neither. Okay,
Feels like you're asking for something.
I was going to say black can play b7 to b6, right? And defend, but why? No need for that.
Can you play like queen c3? I know queen b4 is available, but I'm not even sold that the queen trade is that easy for black because now you have a pawn sticking out on b4.
Ah, maybe you have c3 after all that.
Just open the c file. Yes.
And then you can even maybe consider sacking on c6 and just play like rook and bishop with the passed pawn on the queen side. Long term. Thinking long into the future. But I feel like, Robert, every time we try to predict something, Andrejkin just comes up with some utter refutation of our idea. Just some super creative. Wow, Fabi doesn't play queen c3. I think Fabi is not having a fun time dealing with these openings. And it's making him almost hesitate. Like, look at this, king d1. Wow.
And can't Andrejkin suddenly decide to go for activity, like with a c5 break of his own?
You got to feel for Fabi because he's like running his king over there, and the action's about to happen. It's actually going to be rook c8, c5.
You've committed, just go and then play f3. Like, yes, c5 is going to open up white's king, but then f3 will open up black's king. And if you're Fabi, look at the clock. You're now down a minute and 20 seconds, and it's going to keep ticking if you don't start making these decisions almost impulsively. Like, you got to use your intuition and run your king and push your pawns and open up the black king. So let's leave Fabiano to his king march because the other game has changed a little bit. We're just going to check in to see how Hikaru and Lenier are doing. Ooh, look at that eval bar. Advantage Dominguez.
Yeah, advantage Dominguez. We'll see if he's able to consolidate, but it's a very tactical position, right? He's got to be super sharp with his calculation.
You remember how we saw that position where Fabiano had pawns that look like this?
Yes.
Ugh. And knight takes d4. Apparently not the most precise, but how can you blame Dominguez for that capture? Got to take it back.
Yeah, what was the move there? That's probably something absurd as usual.
Yeah, maybe just like a knight c5, just like go for the squares.
Yeah, I was going to say it's probably something like that, just keeping the tension, but he forced the issue, and he takes, improving the structure there. Very nice from Hikaru.
What about rook c8 here? Because if takes, rook takes b7, you just get your rooks super quickly into the game.
Yeah, that actually does look super annoying. I think Hikaru will make him take with the pawn to keep things closed. But the bishop on g6 is also a savage. You're never getting rid of that. Oh, look, there it is. Is there rook
better
e1?
for black.
Like, he's got to trade now, I think.
I think it's a rook e1. Dominguez, like, you're saying Hikaru needs a trade. Lenier says, no trades for you. I'm going to keep as many pieces on the board because I'm going to try to pick off your targets, your weaknesses, and the king on f2 might find itself in danger, especially if this bishop can plant itself on e4.
Then I'm going to go rook e3 and bishop d3 the second you take on c6.
Okay. I'm going to show that just quickly because Levy's making the point that I'm just going to try to close the position up, he says, and maybe black is symbolically better pawn structure, but there is good defense everywhere for white. Not enough pawns remain. So
I don't know, but I'm sure computer has some more active way to deal with all this, like rook e5, I don't know, or something. Rook e1,
sure.
rook e5.
Sure, but I think your point is well taken. I mean, seriously, this trading off the bishops will ease the drawing path, because if you get bishop e4 and like f5 in, that's long-term danger for the white king.
Okay, he does it this way. I like the idea of rook a d1 after. So rook h to e1 and rook a to d1 and trading on d3 in that regard, so that at least both rooks are in the middle. I'm actually kind of confused he did it this way, but I'm sure he has some sort of plan.
I don't know.
Actually,
Hikaru's at a 1 minute, by the way.
Yeah, he looks unhappy. So I don't know what he overlooked, but I guess the other way was better. Rook h e1 and then rook a d1.
But Lenier, finally, he's the one putting pressure on the clock. I mean, he's had the lead on time for most of the match. He just then burns clock at the wrong moment. Look at this. 40 seconds remaining for Hikaru. His rook e5, that was an inaccuracy. B takes c6 is automatic. hitting the bishop.
Is
and
it?
protecting
What
the
about
pawn.
f6? Was there f6?
There's f6 now.
Yeah, there's f6 now, but I thought maybe there was some sort of tactic. Yeah, this is really strange. He's not trading the bishop. He's going to lose a lot of time here.
And Lenier might also play like rook b8, rook b3. Okay,
Wow.
See that, Levy? It may not have been the 100% best move, although he's keeping the advantage. He's doing it quickly, and he understands that the way to beat Hikaru is both on the board and not giving him the time to be resourceful.
Yeah, I almost feel like with Hikaru, the time that ticks lower, his adrenaline kicks in, and when you have to make one move in 1 second when you're nervous, you got to pick Hikaru, right? It's either Hikaru or Magnus. Like their nerves are, or I mean, today it's Andraken, but those two guys. And the problem is he's not going to go down without a fight. You got to beat him like 10 times in one game. Like this looks miserable for white, but it's not lost.
No, and Hikaru might do this at some point, just to try to get a mating net of sorts. At G4,
Wow.
G5, rook E8, rook H8. And what can black do to stop it? Because if rook takes A3, just G5. Oh, there's always bishop H7 at the end to save the day. So maybe Lenier can go pawn grabbing. Just take this one, go after C3, have an outside pass pawn. Big moment here for Dominguez. It's a good point. Start with King G7. The A3 pawn's not going anywhere. So King G7 feels like a completely reasonable first step at this moment. He takes an A3, but he spent a lot of time doing it. King G7, G5. Here Hikaru goes. I think after rook H8, there's always bishop H7, right? Oh, but there's bishop D3. Yeah, sorry. I mean, for sure, this rook is immediately under attack, and he plays f6. He listens to Levy. I don't have that answer. They're all about 0.3, minus 0.3. We're hovering in territory where most moves should be decent, but I like Lenier's clock. He's putting pressure on him. A5, just send it. Your king's not getting mated on f6. You've done everything right. Send the pawn. Why is he thinking for so long? Lenier, you got to go, man. You got to go. And thank you for the raid from Botez Live. Hear that's coming in, so appreciate that one. And well, we appreciate this endgame we have in front of us as well. Rook E7 was Lenier Dominguez's choice, trying to get the rooks off and then use the outside pass pawn and attack the C3 pawn as well. So rook H6, good defense by Hikaru.
Robert, I'm back. I am back.
Hey, there you are.
Some people would have celebrated that my microphone cut out, but unfortunately for those people, we are back and better than ever. And Hikaru's down to 10 seconds.
Oh, 10 seconds? Bishop H5, great move, just trading off pieces. If you swap as a rook C3, there's rook H7 check, and then rook takes A7. But the king, Levy, this king goes to D6, and D4 is a bit of a problem.
D6 or E4? King F5, King E4, also possible. Oh, but then rook E7.
Just cut you off.
Wow.
The problem is if rook D3 is rook A4. You just got to defend passively.
Or
King
that.
D6. And then
that's
A4.
smart. Rook A4 after you force the king to defend the pawn.
Yeah, the king doesn't get to venture out into the center like you were advocating for.
Amazing. And that's it. This was Lenier's chance. It came and it went, and he will have to rely on game number 4. He's going to have to bring something to the table and come up with some better way of playing against the Berlin, because that other way was probably the best that he was going to provide, and Hikaru still defended in an excellent manner. And there you go. We see this typical simplification down to a position of one pawn imbalanced endgames. Beginners, intermediates watching, you got to know how to defend this. Get your Philidor position down, and you'll be good to go.
And what black wants is to get this king into c4 very quickly, but Hikaru will not allow that, because if this king got up the board, that would be an issue. But white can always give it a check.
Hikaru really does not look excited for a guy that is going into the knockout game of his head-to-head matchup, but he kind of like never looks excited until the job is done. He's frustrated a bit, and he's up on time, by the way, again.
Yeah, we're deep in this end game here. King A3 was also possible. King C3. Just stay close to your pawn.
Yeah, there's the check.
This one's a draw.
Yeah, there's ways to lose with white if you get to C5 and mate yourself, but I don't think so.
Nah. Although rook F3 to D3, be very careful now. Rook F3, don't go King B4. Although it might still work because you have rook G4. But yeah, go here, because if the rook attacks the pawn, your king goes up. Yep. The rook cannot get to this D4 pawn.
It's going to get some more moves. I don't think Lanier is going to play rook and pawn versus rook, but he will play this position for sure. He might play both.
Yeah, this is a... Hikaru has the ideal setup. He knows what he's doing, and he's not going to allow Lanier even an ounce of hope. So good game from Dominguez, ultimately, with the black pieces. He was pressing, but for Hikaru Nakamura, 2-1 lead is exactly what you want at this point. So let's go back to Caruana against Andreykin. We have a minute and a half per side, and oh my goodness, this matchup might end right here. Levy move rook H1 was the last move played here, and it appears that even material, but White's king might be in worse shape.
Is it just rook H1 and queen C4, or what is it? What exactly is the...
You can do that. You can also bring the rook to C8. Your king on B7 is so safe over here. Queen C4 next.
This is unbelievable. Wow.
It's a huge collapse from Caruana.
And it was a recipe for disaster from the beginning. He was getting really nice positions, but from that first game, it all went downhill. It just all went downhill, and
is Queen C4 just game over now?
It's got to be, right?
Queen D7.
What?
I think this is Dmitry Andreykin saying, if I draw this game, I get white in game 4. How are you going to beat me? But that, I mean, why not Queen C4? You can never lose that position.
Yeah, what? I'm so perplexed. I'm also a little bit perplexed why this is such a bad move, but...
Just Queen D1.
Yeah, Queen D1 or Queen A1, right? It's the question. Also, do you have to guard A4? Do you have some perpetual, maybe? I don't know.
Probably what Fabi's looking at, but how do you not play Queen C4? That is extremely surprising.
Is there Queen H6? Maybe like Queen A4, Queen E6, or do I get mated? Can I put my king on C1, or is there a checkmate at the end with Bishop D3? It's probably a checkmate at the end with Bishop D3.
And Levy's point is the black king can always hide on A6 and not enough checks. So Queen D1 ultimately played, and now we get a time scramble. So Fabiano gets a new lease on his tournament by not losing this game at that moment, but Queen H7 still causes problems. Probably Queen G1 now.
Wow.
Keep that queen out of there.
Queen is just desperately different. Then Queen H5. Oh my gosh. This is so scary.
And maybe King C1 then? It's King C2 instead.
Robert, this looks miserable for white. Completely miserable.
Agree. No, how do you defend this? King B2, good start.
Robert, the bishop on C4 is like the kid who was bullied in grade school and turned out to be an MMA fighter. That bishop was just, we made fun of it the whole game. And now it's the best piece on the board.
Yeah, it's amazing how that happened. I mean, Dmitry Andreykin just held steady, and now he's on press. He is 30. Oh, a blunder. Queen D1, and he's dropping. Oh, Queen B3 check. Everything is hanging.
That's it. I can't believe it. He's gone down.
Queen A1, King D2, and push the pawn. Just maybe start
A4,
getting
A3.
that one going.
Wow, that is unreal. And it was always bound to happen. Time got low, position got unpleasant. Andreykin was the aggressor. And I don't think Fabiano's getting another chance from this point forward, because it's the bishop on F4 is just a non-factor.
Queen E4 check almost works, but I think white is in time to stop the pawn. He goes bishop B5. He wants A4, A3.
Why don't you just play B5? I don't get it.
He doesn't want to push his pawns and weaken his king. But yeah, he's going to go a4, a3, and then trade queens.
Yep.
8 seconds for Caruana. He doesn't even see a move here. Bishop
see a
e3 played.
How was queen h1 not just winning on the spot? But yeah, that's also
It
good.
is. Queen h1 was winning. Have a cash push.
Probably. Okay, queen
Oh,
a1.
not the best move, apparently. He wants his king in.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
There's no bishop b2. Just queen moves to b1, right?
Yeah, queen b1.
That's game. And queen. Although king f6, like suddenly, what is bishop d3?
What is going on in this game?
Oh, he allowed to check. But b5?
Bishop d3 back too?
Oh gosh, he wants some kind of queen check.
No way. 7 seconds for Andraken.
How does he get out of this? Because queen a8, queen b8 looks like a repetition. So he takes the pawn, and now his king can walk to a5 into b4.
Yeah, but he's going to lose the a2 pawn.
And then e6 is a target. Oh my goodness. The b pawn goes up.
Yeah, queen b8, and just the king is going to zigzag, right?
Mm-hmm. But queen e7?
Oh my gosh, queen e7. Oh,
The king would have gone to c4 and to d3.
I think this is it. We are about to see the final move of the matchup between Fabiano Caruana and Dmitry Andraken as he punches his ticket to the round of 8 in Toronto in unreal fashion. There are matches and then there are matches, and Dmitry Andraken was lights out today. He was not ever going to go down in any of these 3 games, Robert.
Unbelievable. He was on the edge of defeat, on the precipice, and he won game 2 after drawing game 1 somehow, and game 3 he ices the match. Dmitry Andraken is an absolute force. I know people are not as familiar with the name Andraken as they should be, but I hope after the Rapid Chess Championship we got 2nd place, and now here in the Chess.com Global Championship presented by Brave, he is in to the final 8. He will be in Toronto. Dmitry Andraken, everybody, you will want to write down that name and not forget it.
Just a sublime match by him. Did anybody have Andraken beating Caruana in 3? Because that is exactly what happened. In tennis, you can win in straight sets. And today, we saw Andraken winning in basically the chess equivalent with a magical save in the first game, followed by an even more magical come-from-behind victory in game 2. And this one was a mildly dubious opening that, yes, we were making fun of, but we really, Robert, I think we both deep down knew that if Fabi didn't put him away early, Dmitry was going to survive that game because it seemed like it was going throughout the entire match. And it once again happened.
Yeah, when you can't land a knockout, when someone is wobbling, that's going to let them back in there. You just got to stay alive. Dmitry Andraken doesn't just stay alive in the match. He advances to Toronto. So if we look at today's scores, we see that Dominguez still has a chance against Nakamura, but Levy, 2.5 for Dmitry Andraken. Incredible.
Absolutely incredible. You can legitimately make a case that either of them are deserving to be a 1 seed, given both of their prowess in all types of chess, classical, rapid, and blitz. But it definitely seems like Dmitry has had a stellar run in a lot of the chess.com online events, and he's a beast. It very well could be. He's the 2nd best rapid player in Russia, right? I mean, obviously they have Yan Nepomuceno. It's a little bit tough when that's the number 1 guy, but he's been incredible. And that's it. He's in the, there's nothing else besides making it to the final 8 in Toronto. And he's certainly just done that in the most emphatic of fashions.
Yeah, and it takes a lot of courage to play that passively against Fabiano Caruana. And speaking of Brave, well, Brave is our presenting sponsor. So we want to give them a shout out as always, because Brave means private browsing and so much more. By default, Brave blocks ads and trackers on every page and video you visit, even on YouTube. No ads means up to 3 times faster page loads, faster streaming, and faster playback. It means 35% longer battery life while saving on mobile data and internet bandwidth. For Android, iOS, and desktop, get the best browser for gamers, streamers, and creators. Switch in 60 seconds at brave.com/chess. And with the Andraken Caruana matchup in the books, Dmitry Andraken heading towards Canada, we do have 1 game remaining, at the very least, between Hikaru Nakamura and Leonid Dominguez here at the 2022 Chess.com Global Championship presented by Brave.
open to anyone, all around the world.
Oh my gosh.
The Chess.com Global Championship offers the dream of playing against the best.
We are in for a wild ride.
And hey, have we mentioned there's also $1 million at stake?
The total pot is $1 million.
No, that is not a typo. The prizes are unbelievably generous.
We began with thousands of players. Now only dozens remain.
What a move by Timur. It's over. He's going to live to tell the tale.
And that is enough to take victory in this Armageddon game, Danya.
The CGC knockout phase has arrived. There are those who played their way in, and some are here thanks to their well-earned reputations. No matter who you are, things are about to get very, very real.
Oh my
What a
goodness. Massive congratulations to Sam Savion.
A trip to the CGC finals and a clean shot at the largest first place prize of the year. My friends, it's the CGC round of 16. Who will take the next step to Toronto?
And we return here at the CGC. Leonard Dominguez looking off in the distance. Maybe he's trying to look all the way towards Canada, because if he wants to make it there, he needs to win this game against Hikaru Nakamura. Levy, the matchup between Hikaru and Dominguez lifetime has been pretty knotted up, but right now, Hikaru with the 1-game lead.
We basically see in this matchup exactly why they win and lose more games in Rapid. They have each one apiece in Classical, but there is 12 draws as well. And when you go to the Rapid, that 12 becomes 8 wins, 4 losses with 1 draw. Now, obviously, in their last 10 games, it's been a little bit closer, and they are quite familiar with one another. But thus far, we've seen the differences in the playing style. We've seen the differences in the approach, and it's been close. But Hikaru definitely got the edge in that first game. Good opening preparation shown by both sides. Good time management shown by one of the sides, let's put it this way. And we have liftoff. I think we're about to have the game.
Yeah, we are about to have game 4. Dominguez gets the white pieces. That's the good news for him. Hikaru looking like he doesn't have a worry in the world. He is just focused on this final game. He needs to draw, and that puts the onus squarely on Dominguez's shoulder. And we get an Italian, so no more Berlin.
Yeah, we get an Italian, but the risk of changing up your own openings as well is you don't know what Hikaru is going to play. Hikaru could have come prepared with a totally different Italian line. He plays this d6, a6, so he's not castling yet. He's not playing h6. He moves the bishop to a7. Now he castles. So many different nuances of the move order here, and it's going to be a long battle.
And Hikaru has been playing a lot of A5 lines and A6. So I believe he anticipated that Dominguez would be aiming for that kind of position. And we are 13 moves in. This is still theoretical. One of the big ideas for white is to continue expanding. B5, C4. Just get a clamp going. Black's main push is D5. That's not such an easy move to make work, because then the E5 pawn becomes loose. So now Hikaru is the first player to take a bit of a think. He is trying to figure out what is the theory here. Is it D5? I believe that's too early. So a slower move, maybe it's knight E7 to G6. That way the knight is stabilized rather than being able to be kicked from its current square.
I like the rook on e6 for black in a lot of these positions, because I just have a dream of getting that knight to f4 after a couple of moves and the rook to g6, but it's never that easy. The guy playing with white's just not going to let that happen. There's b5, d4, all these different breaks. And yeah, it seems like bishop b2 is the first new move here. And Robert, this setup by black is one where black doesn't ask a whole lot of questions. Black just sort of kind of plays responsive moves, whereas in that a5 line, you're much more aggressive. But wow, c4. And now the moves are picking up the pace once again.
Just give me all of the space, says Leonard Dominguez. And this is a Dominguez type of position. You see him win beautiful positional masterpieces by squeezing the pineapple juice out of his opponent. And in this position, what is black's plan? Levy mentioned a knight coming to f4. And then what? Right? There's just one knight there. It's not exactly a devastating attack. So what instead Hikaru opts for is c6 and maybe d5. But, I mean, Leonard just doesn't pause.
Oh, he
Bishop
doesn't?
c3.
Oh, yeah, what is this? I'm trying to follow along and try to put this game into some sort of database and see. Can you check the Explorer? where are we?
There's been a d4 move. And in fact, this looks like the matchup. Who was this matchup? It was Wesley So in the previous round, not against Jeffrey Zhang, but in his second round match, the round of 32. I believe he's getting positions like that, or maybe I'm mixing up the players, but there were a bunch of games in a similar position. Maybe it was actually the first match against Denis Lazovic. Excuse me.
Yeah, there's so much different theory and overlapping move orders. Well, we're saying there's a course apparently on this line. And this is a fascinating position. This is a very strange e4, e5 game since Black has played a6 and then a5 and lost the pawn. He just straight up lost the pawn, but he's basically saying, I'll win it back. Don't worry about it.
And look at Lanier giving up the h-pawn. Like, you can steal that pawn if you're Hikaru Nakamura, but then this knight comes to f5, a rook goes to the b1, the b7 pawn is loose. So what a fascinating opening we've seen thus far. And I have to say that in a must-win position, Levy, this is Lanier playing quickly, but Black's position isn't that solid. It's actually a very kind of risky structure.
Yeah, it is a really risky structure. The b file is super weak. You're not going to get that attack that I was mentioning earlier with rook g6. There's no attack. If anybody has an attack here, it's white in the future. Very slow improvement. g3, f4, king g2, and so on. Maybe queen g4 somehow. I really like this for white. Do I like it to the extent of being able to beat Hikaru? Maybe not. Maybe not. Hikaru's been up to the task defensively today.
Well, we're being told that this is following a game that Dominguez beat Nakamura in the St. Louis Rapid and Blitz. I'm not sure he went all the way to this point because we're 22 moves deep, but from this variation. So Lanier with happy memories, and Nakamura likely with improvements. But rook b1, queen f3, pawn g3, king g2, rook h1. Levy, your idea, it kind of plays itself in a way, and I don't see where Black's active play is going to come from.
Yeah, I don't see it either. That knight on f5 is amazing. Knight on f5 in e4, e5 games, especially with same-side castling, is super scary for Black.
For sure.
I don't know.
And that's actually, I think, part of the reason why Lanier is okay jettisoning this pawn is it establishes the knight on f5, and it can't be kicked because anytime you play g6, you drop the h6 pawn. But Lanier, after queen d8, he goes in the think tank. He is the one who played h4 right here. He didn't have to play h4. He made the move quickly, and these moves are pretty forced, and now he's the one spending time. So his prep, I think, is finally done, and that's good news for Hikaru Nakamura and his fans.
That's super scary. All of this has been super scary. Yeah, I'm gonna go. I was going and exploring a little bit. What's funny is that this line, if you check the database, is all Hikaru recently for a super long period of time. Bishop b2 is relatively rare. I think there actually isn't a Hikaru game in that line just yet, except for that game between Dominguez and Nakamura. And Robert, that game followed this game until move 19.
Wow.
When in that previous game, Lanier played b5, but in this game, he decided to take the pawn. That is absurd. That Hikaru played the exact same way as he did in the St. Louis Rapid tournament recently, and played the exact same way again. And is like, Lanier, I am willing to bet you my prep is better than your prep.
I'm going to have to disagree with that because I'm looking at this position, and it just looks good for white, right? Like, Lanier changed one thing. He took the pawn rather than pushing forward, and now the eval bar says plus 1.5. I don't need the eval bar to explain to me that this position is nice for white. This queen is just going to venture out over to the king side. It feels like Black is quite frozen in many ways over here. I can't get behind it.
I agree. B7 looks weak. The A7 bishop is not doing a whole lot. But just like in any sport, sometimes the team is losing. Sometimes the player is losing. And you got to play defense. And he's been doing that. He's done that. He's done that in every game, actually. He's demonstrated defense first, it feels like. And then defense turns into offense, and he goes on the attack.
I guess the big question is, how does white proceed? Because you're saying Hikaru at first has to take a defensive posture, and then he's the one who can move his piece for maybe knight c5, maybe rook g6, things like that. So what actually is Lenier's plan here? He can bring his queen out. He could also just play g4, king g2, rook h1, but that's not a move you make lightly. You need to be positive that it's the time to do it. And it looks interesting. I mean, interesting is a cop-out word, I know, but it does look pretty fun.
It's okay if you say it with a Russian accent. It's like all players like that. Oh, no, it's very interesting. But yeah, so G4, rook H1, G5 looks actually very good. And if HG, Queen H5 is just game over, just straight up win. So, do you think the books behind Linier are chess books or regular books?
Because they match in color, I feel like it's a collection of some sort. And I mean, my vision's not that great, so I don't think it's my great predecessors or anything like that, but it's chess books, I think.
Is it? What does that say? I'm trying to look. We have a big capture here of Linier as he's thinking. I keep wanting them to put it up on the big screen.
You know how many sleuths there are in the chat? I mean, I'm not reading them, but I'm sure that they're there trying to figure out the titles of the books on the shelves. But I feel like they have to be at least in part chess books.
I would love to ask. Linier strikes me as a guy who reads. Just strikes me as a guy who loves to read.
Yeah.
You like to read, Robert?
I love to read, yeah.
Oh. Good then. I don't know how to read, so I'm jealous.
Oh, well, I'm a big reader. I was actually looking for my book, but I don't see it somewhere over there. Not that I'm giving any plugs to authors that I'm reading at the moment anyway, but...
Why not? I mean, Linier is still thinking. We could talk about chess. We could talk about books.
Well, he's out of book. That's clear. And he's trying to... Oh, G3. So slow approach by Linier. And now I'm just curious what the book's behind him. Now I'm distracted.
Yeah, G3 is such a respectful way of playing this position. Just feel like in a must-win situation, I don't know. You got to go G4. What was the top engine move in that position, out of curiosity?
It was G4. Yeah, G4 and Queen G4 are like splitting votes, essentially.
Queen G4 and then try to move the queen and then play G2, G4. Well, it's pretty play G4, though.
It's pretty interesting. It wants this, like Queen H3 to defend D3. So after Knight C5, you probably said Bishop B4. And then you can't move the Knight because there's Knight E7 check kind of stuff. It's like all sorts of different stuff up here.
Or apparently not. The computer was trying to change its mind somehow.
Yeah, it said that at first, and now it wants like Rook F1 and F4. So it just wants to go for the attack.
Yeah, man. G3 is... Okay, he's still going for this plan, but look at Hikaru rerouting the bishop. That's so expertly done. Bishop C5, Bishop F8. It's passive, but it's the right thing to do. The bishop is at least more valuable on F8 than it is on A7. It still looks awful for black, but it's already an improvement.
Is white going to try to play F4? I guess now you can't take it back with the G-pawn, which is what you'd really want. But F4 is the type of move that's begging to be played in such a position.
Absolutely. Not to mention that if the dark squared bishop of white was traded for the knight, let's say on C5, white would still have a very nice position with the knight on F5, but the bishop on F8 does a great job defending, and A5 falling could spell trouble for white.
Yeah, long term, that's a really big target that black is trying to go after. He plays F4 right away because if E takes, bishop takes, and that rook on B8 has to move, which drops the B7 pawn.
Yeah, this is... Now Hikaru perks up. You see him a little bit there. He's like, all right, yeah, this is what you want to do? You sure about this? And Hikaru excels in stuff like this. Counterplay, just understanding the dynamics between attack and defense. And Linier in a must-win spot is a stressful moment for me because he's playing an excellent counterattacker. He's not playing a guy who's just going to get a little intimidated by the moment and maybe do something wrong.
But Leonard did get the exact type of position that he needs. Right? You're in a must-win game. You can't just dilly-dally. You can't say, oh, I'm slightly better. I'm going to try to nurse this little advantage. No, he is going full steam ahead, no fear whatsoever, and he has a very good position with chances to win.
Yeah, but G3, right? Like he had to go G4. He had to be a bit more disrespectful about the position. He wasn't.
I love how you frame it, though. He had to be more disrespectful. Linear and disrespect do not belong in the same sentence ever. The guy is, simply put, the nicest human being ever.
I know. And he had to throw that caution to the wind and play G4, damn it. He had to play G4, G5, Rook H1, all this stuff, but he kind of did a little bit more respectfully. He's trying to do it the right way. But sometimes in chess, you have to not do things the right way. And G4 was an absurd move, but I guess not. It's not a stylistic choice for Linear.
And Hikaru, he's perking up now. He's defending quite. Where'd he go? He's stretching.
No, I think maybe
he was touching his toes.
What is going on? What
is he tying? It looks like he's tying something, grabbing cables. Hikaru, you're not streaming right now. Oh, that would be bad.
Oh man, is his mouse dead? What is going on?
Well, Hikaru back in the day, I remember when we played in the Olympiad together, he would type moves on, all the way back in the ICC days. He'd be typing moves playing bullet. So,
wow.
He's good even without a hardwired mouse.
Yeah, you can just telepathically move things by looking at them. Speaking of, is it bad to suggest features during live events? Why don't we get type to move? Can we do that somehow?
Good question. I mean,
guys, type to move, please. Maybe just for Diamond members. I'm a Diamond member. Can we just get it?
just for Levy. Honestly, nobody else needs it.
Yeah. You don't like type to move?
It just doesn't seem very practical.
It doesn't, but
it's fun.
Yeah, it's exactly. Oh, also good for blindfold chess.
Very true.
Do blindfold chess, you could just type the moves. I don't know, just food for thought. Yeah, I don't know. He looked really disheveled there for a second, but now, okay, time is back to equal. And
gives up B7 for A5. Looks quite reasonable. Knight C5. Okay, doesn't want A5 yet. Levy, I have to say, I think this is starting to go in Hikaru's direction.
Yes. Sometimes these matchups are a nightmare stylistically for one of the sides. And today, it really has felt like sometimes when Hikaru plays Linear, I almost get the opposite effect. Like that day, Linear is a bit more sharp. And then stylistically, it's a disaster of a matchup for Hikaru. Like if Hikaru tries to be a little bit too aggressive or Linear just gets the kind of position he wants. But today, Linear got the positions that he probably wanted, and Hikaru was just unbeatable. He just couldn't be beaten at all. Just excellent defense. Great counterplay. And he's doing it for a third game.
Yeah, it looked very promising for Linear. And right now, Hikaru up a minute on the clock, defending accurately. And Rook B6, I think Knight D7. This retreat should be sufficient. Although, there is an opportunity for Linear to sacrifice an exchange because the Rook is under attack. But you do not want to allow a white pawn to land on B6. Protected. So Queen B3 is an option here for Linear. And he's just trying to keep things spicy.
But then Rook A5, I guess, you would play. I don't know.
Yeah, the knight covers B8 very importantly.
Rook B7, Knight C5 walking into, but then Rook B8.
Right, what we're talking about is something like this: Knight C5, Rook B8, and white wins.
Yeah, brutal.
Yeah, you're like, I got a fork going on, but Rook B8 is too powerful with the back rank issues for Black.
That's so ridiculous. Queen B3 is one of the best moves. Rook A5 is the best move. Rook B7 is the best move. Knight C5 seems to be losing. What's the best move after Rook B7?
Well, if it's not clear, then Linear should obviously go for it. Like, you just got to trust himself. And being down 2 minutes to Hikaru is not the way to go.
Top level chess is so fascinating where you can put a couple of guys in a certain spot and you know for a fact that they would play a certain move. Like, for example, Levon, I think for a fact, will play Queen B3 in that position. Shakhriyar would play Queen B3 in that position. And then other guys would play Rook B7. I don't know. And then Rook C7, Rook C7, Knight E6 just wins on the spot for Black. So what do you play here? What was his plan after Rook B7?
He doesn't really have one. He could throw an A6 because you can't take with the Rook because it's Rook B8 check. Check to the queen. But rook b8 would be a threat. So a6, knight takes a6. At the very least, you kind of gain a move. I don't know what you're going to do with that move, but maybe there's something.
Maybe he wanted a6. I don't know, something crazy, like
right.
But then knight a6, and then I don't really know what you're doing after that. He could always go back. He could go rook b6, but why would you spend this much time to go back rook b6? Right?
Yeah, and you're in danger of a repetition. I guess it's not quite there. Knight d7, then queen b3, and you're out of it. He does play a6. Do not take this rook, everybody. I know a rook is more valuable than a knight, but not when you give it. I wasn't even trying to make the right move, and I did anyway. But you allow this pawn here. It's attacking the rook, about to promote. The bishop covers the square. Do not take on b7. Hikaru does not. He takes on a6. So this is where Lanier needs to go. And he plays queen h5. Oh, wait a second. Is rook takes f7 a threat?
Ouch. Maybe? What's the idea? So knight c5, rook f7? What just...
Oh, the eval's going up here. Rook to b1, switch flanks.
Oh, rook b1 is... Oh, and he does it.
Wait a second. Hikaru's completely tied down now.
Yeah, I think he kind of underestimated that. And 5.5 minutes is more than enough time to put this all together.
Let's bring up an analysis board, because a6 was a clever try by Lanier. We like that move. And apparently knight takes a6, which is like the most obvious move, is incorrect. Wow. The right move, I just cheated, is queen c8. So just kind of keeping tension on. That is an impossible human move. Or it's impossible for a human to play, I should say. Queen c8? Right? It's just like you're now attacking the rook. The a6 pawn's still hanging. It allows rook c7 and stuff, but that's not happening.
Yeah. Yep. Queen e8, rook b1. Wow.
What is
it equal material?
Even material.
It is even material. Doesn't feel like it. Hasn't felt like equal material the entire game.
Well, d4 is also hanging for good measure, so it may only be equal material for a move or two longer.
I don't care. I'm not taking that pawn. I don't even notice that pawn is hanging. My knight is only going forward. I like to tell like low rated players 9 times out of 10 the best move is going forward. It's never going back. 1 time out of 10, Hikaru seems to think the pawn is important and he defends it.
Okay, so how does Lanier
A5.
keep going? A5, just try to push this pawn. I like the look of that.
No.
Rook A7, if you get the second rook on B7, you'd be winning, but the knight will come back to C5, so you don't get that.
This is the moment. This is the big moment of the game. Lanier is better. Can he get it done? That's it. That's really it. Can he get it done or not?
He has dropped under 5 minutes. Hikaru to 6:46 himself, so about a 2-minute lead now for Hikaru. Queen F3, the best move. Like the engine stayed the same, the bar. Queen F3. This is just like prophylaxis, right? Just I'm going to defend the pawn on D3 in the event of knight C5, and then I can go moves like rook to B8. So D3 is a very important pawn to keep control of.
And Hikaru is trying to secure control over B4, so he's maybe trying to put his knight there. Now rook b6 is another possibility in the future to maybe trade the black rook, but also a4 is hanging now.
So play rook 1 to b5. That way when knight b4 happens, and oh my gosh, Lanier is on fire.
Ribs.
Knight b4, the rook is inside, right? The rook is inside where the knight would be. Otherwise, it would be blocked out of the action. So now a5 is available. Levy, this looks so horrible for black.
It does look horrible. You missed my pun. I know Naroditsky likes to hit you with puns. R1, B5, ribs?
Is ribs?
No?
Oh,
yeah, ribs.
I was wondering why you said ribs.
I'm hungry. Yeah. I didn't just blurt out a random word. Yeah, ribs. Knight before. Hikaru is trying to, hold it down on the dark squares, but this looks miserable. I completely agree.
A5 looks very pleasant. Bishop C7 at any moment to secure that pawn. And Lanier, he just continues to spend a little bit more time than I'm comfortable with. I mean, I'm looking at the position. It's great, but it just doesn't feel like he's found his true comfort zone.
No, he hasn't. And 4 minutes goes by very fast. It's like the opposite of maybe certain other events. You can look at the clock and go, oh, wow, I feel like it's been 5 minutes. It's only went 10 seconds, right? But in this case, you look at the clock and go, wait a minute, I got 30 seconds left. And somehow time moves faster when you play Hikaru. And okay, Rook B8 apparently is wrong. Is Rook B8 wrong? Looks great.
Do you really want to take on B8? I don't think so. And knight C6 back, and maybe that's why. Look at that knight from A6 to C6, covering A5 now, and covering B8.
Yeah, and supposedly he's already slightly messed it up. How? I mean, at some point, White has to play E5 too, right? You've got to play E4, E5, maybe A4, A5. That's so crazy that A5 is just not like winning for White. That just doesn't make any sense.
I think it was the right move a few turns ago when he went Rook to B8, but A5 with Rook B8 to follow looks very promising.
A5, knight A5, Rook B8 isn't winning for White?
Let's easy way to find out. No.
All right, I don't understand anything about chess. What, Queen D7 and there's just nothing, yeah? Just nothing at all. Okay.
Oh, allegedly just equal.
Yeah.
But
well, if it's just equal, that means that it's just dead. It's a quagmire. Nobody can get through.
Well, Lenier is doing the worst of all options. He's spending a lot of time. He's just too deliberate. Like, you need to trust yourself, and you need to use the clock as a weapon. And right now, the clock is a huge advantage for Hikaru. It's why he's staying in this game. And if the time situation were reversed and the clocks suggested that Dominguez could continue to increase his chances, then we'd be talking about a different story here. But right now, Levy, I mean, Lenier is just being too slow.
Yeah, just too slow. That's the best way to describe it. Rook B7. I even saw Stockfish try to flash for a moment there that black was better, which is completely absurd. That's so frustrating. And it's looking like Queen A8 is on the way and just a fork? Is that it?
Sometimes it's that simple. Although moving the queen away from the king side, you might walk into some kind of rook takes f7 if you're not careful. There is a queen on f3 after all.
Yeah, there's still scary tactics all over the board, but somehow it's just nothing there. And if black takes on a4, black gets to the white king too. It's amazing defense.
Maybe rook c7, and after queen takes here, there's that e5 move you've been suggesting. I think that's the way to go. You need to start going after this king.
I agree. Rook c7, e5. He has to do something. How is it possible that Hikaru's pieces have just not gotten air the whole game, and he's still defending? He's just defending everything. The pawn's gone now. Black is up a pawn now. Black is still up 4 minutes. Wow.
He's such a tenacious defender, is Hikaru Nakamura. The guy always puts up stubborn resistance, and he's going to need to continue to defend. You see the evaluation says zeros. Now, black is up a pawn. So if it's zeros, it means that white has a great set of ideas and chances against the black king. E5 looks like a step in the right direction, and Lenier is just spending too much time. He's being a perfectionist. Perfect is the enemy of the good. He needs to go.
Perfect is the enemy of the good. Wow. I have to read more, Robert. What a line. I hope that wasn't said by like some, boxer or something. I hope that was said like in some book.
Yeah, it's not a boxer. Don't worry.
Okay.
Although that would kind of that'd be a sweet thing though if a boxer said it.
Well, sometimes athletes quote some philosophical spots, and then if I've never heard it, I'm like, I don't think he said that. I don't think. I'm not sure he came up with that. Knight d6 though. It's still some chances maybe. But queen c2, queen a2.
I mean, this looks worrisome. Because queen c2, the king goes up to h3. Oh, I never answered your question, by the way. It's Voltaire. But or at least that's who it's attributed to. Probably stole it from somebody who doesn't get credit. But
Voltaire just had a friend drinking some alcohol in the 17th century. And I don't know when Voltaire was alive. I'm very sorry.
Well, I think 18th century is probably when I don't know. Someone can Google this. I'm not going to do it.
All right. Rook.
But, knight e6.
Can't take anything. Rook f7, bishop d6. Good luck.
Whoa. Right, this looks like a hanging pawn, but rook f7, bishop d6, as pointed out, and this rook is under attack, so you can't take with the knight. Can you move the bishop because queen takes f7 is there?
Oh, where do you move? Where do you move the bishop? Bishop takes h6. No, because then queen c2. Oh,
he makes a move that's just losing.
Knight f4, queen c6. Knight f4, bishop d6, queen c6. Knight f4, queen c6, and then I don't know. Yeah, that's
it. It feels like there's something like that, as you're saying.
I don't know exactly where it is, but or maybe just queen c2. Queen c2 also looks great.
Queen c2, king h3. Where is the game ender there? That's the question.
I'm perplexed myself. Well, oh no, that also doesn't work. It's very easy to look at the eval bar. Oh, apparently he didn't find it.
Yeah, but this I think is sufficient. You were actually just trade everything and play queen c6. That's what's happening. Take f4, queen c6 check. The queens immediately come off. d6 falls, and Hikaru just needs to draw. He doesn't need to win this game.
Nope, it doesn't need to win. And you know who's not going to win this game is Linier Dominguez, because rook f6, rook f5 might even hold the pawns. There's king e4. Oh, that's a good move. That's it. I think Hikaru just played like all the best moves in this game when his position got unpleasant. It's just unreal. Just incredible stuff. What more can you say?
Even when it seems like he's in trouble, right? He just finds every single accurate defensive move. And Hikaru Nakamura, unless something really tragic happens, he is going to make his way to Toronto, Canada in the first week of November, and he will play for a shot at $200,000.
This is everything that Hikaru has to offer as a chess player. Super sharp calculation skills, solid time management, defensive brilliance, and it was all on display today. Linier really felt like he brought his A game for about 90% of the action today, and Hikaru brought it for 100%, maybe 99% if you want to argue. You cannot be fully perfect in chess, but he was incredible. And of course, I'm sure Hikaru would make some adjustments. But Robert, I think really what this will come down to is the question of, was Linier too passive at critical moments, or was Hikaru just unbeatable?
Hikaru, when he plays like this, there are maybe two people in the world who are going to beat him in a match. And right now, Hikaru Nakamura, he's rising to the occasion. He struggled in the opening match against Grandmaster Vasquez. Against Navarra, he looked very good, but he has looked phenomenal here. Winning game one after extensive preparation from Dominguez looked like it should be a level game, but he pressed and pressed, and an extra pawn led to a victory. And then after that, it's been a steady Nakamura through and through. Here in game four, he doesn't even need to win. He's about to win, and he is going to make his way through to the final eight. And Hikaru Nakamura is just an absolute beast.
Yeah, apparently that wasn't given the blessing somehow. Apparently it's some sort of draw now. Rook e7, and then the king has to... Oh, he's mad. He's mad he messed it up. He wanted to win, but he blundered into a check-check situation. Now if he goes in front of his rook, there's c7. So yeah, he kind of smiled, but luckily it was already in the bag. And yeah, Linier is intent on not making the draw. He still wants to win. So this is very common in must-win situations.
Right. And for a moment, it was, oh no, his online rapid rating. But no, Hikaru is going to take this one home. He has three different pass pawns. Rooks can't really handle them because you just start pushing. But Hikaru just wants to make a draw. He doesn't care about winning this game. A draw locks up the match. His plane ticket is booked. Well, not yet, but it will be. And he will head on over to Toronto, Canada, after going to Reykjavik, Iceland for the Fischer Random Championship.
I know, that's so wild. He's going to have to fly from Reykjavik to Toronto. It's going to be... Okay, where's the repetition?
There it is.
They repeated 10 times. Congratulations to Hikaru Nakamura on a very convincing round of 16 matchup versus Linier Dominguez. And he is our final qualifier of the day to the round of 8 in Toronto.
Whew, wow. Hikaru Nakamura, insanely impressive performance from him. And slow clap, golf clap for Lenier Dominguez, who is eliminated from the 2022 CGC, but he earns $15,000 and had 2 impressive matchups. So we see the scores on the screen in front of us here. We have a win for Hikaru. It's actually 3-1. 2.5, 1.5. It doesn't matter what the final score is. He won the match, but he is the winner, as is Dmitry Andreikin.
Yeah, if you asked me before today's matchups whether I thought that Hikaru would win or Lenier would win, I would say Hikaru was the favorite. The biggest shock of the day was not the fact that Dmitry Andreikin won, but it was in the way that he did it. And it was honestly also a colossal defensive effort from him. And I think what we're realizing as players are saying goodbye to the rest of the field and staying home. I want to say going home, but staying home really for a lot of these matchups. It's not just about how you start these games and how you find yourself in the middle. It's really that you have to be unbeatable at multiple critical moments. And Andreikin and Hikaru today showed that they are. And playing like that, I don't exactly know what the seeding is in Toronto. I don't know exactly who plays who on the first day or the second day, but it's going to be amazing to see all of these best players emerge and ultimately clash against each other.
And we can see how Dmitry Andreikin made his way through to the round of 8. He first took down Aram Hakobian. He then beat Gadakomsky. And then finally, last but certainly not least in this group, he beats Fabiano Caruana. So Dmitry Andreikin, he will square off, I believe, against Wesley So. But Hikaru Nakamura, he also earned his way through to Toronto out of Group A. He first beat Rodrigo Vasquez, then David Navarra, and then Lenier Dominguez in a very impressive performance today.
Yeah, got absolutely nothing more I can add to that. It was sort of everything that we were built for and everything that we had prepared for in a matchup between Hikaru and Lenier. Lenier came out guns blazing in many of these games. He had some really, really nice positions, but like I said, you have to play moves. You can't just get there and say, look what I have here. This is my presentation. Please make a judgment on it. You actually have to play moves. And Hikaru forces you to make the right moves, not just once, not just twice, but the entire game. And you saw in that last game that he is capable of playing 15 best defensive moves in a row. How do you beat a guy like that? I don't know. Don't ask me. Don't ask Robert. Don't ask Lenier Dominguez, because nobody has been able to figure it out. And I still think that he is a number 1 or number 2 favorite in Toronto.
And he was fully focused. He let his moves do the talking. And well, we're going to have a chance to catch up with him. And when we come back from this short break, we will have Hikaru Nakamura for an interview. So stay tuned here at the 2022 Chess.com Global Championship presented by Brave. Hikaru Nakamura. Hikaru, congrats on a great match. How does it feel to book your ticket to Toronto?
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to win the match. I don't know if I necessarily played great chess, but fortunately I was able to keep it together when there was a lot of pressure, and yeah, it's great to win a match.
Yeah, my question was going to be, in that last game, we realized 22 moves into it, Hikaru, that the 19 moves that had been played were the same. So is that a deliberate attempt and then it maybe goes slightly awry, or how does that happen? How do you go into the same 19 or 20 moves? Just what are the feelings like, especially as the game is developing?
Yeah, I mean, I basically forgot to look at the line. I simply forgot that Lenny had played this against me in St. Louis. I completely forgot that he had done it. So I didn't look at the line, and I mean, I knew there was another line that I was intending to play, but I figured, at the end of the day, that he would have to prove something, and I think he actually did prove something. I thought H4, what he did was great. I suspect for a computer, it was completely winning. But I think maybe he was a little bit too slow with this G3, F4. I think if he had gone F4 right away, or maybe some A6. I feel like there's probably some computer line where it's very close to winning for white. But at the end of the day, we're only humans. If you can't prep to move 40, I mean, you have to find the moves. And, we're not 3,800, so Lenier couldn't find the move.
Well, in general, in this match, Hikaru, it felt like you were going down on the clock early out of the opening stage. Not something we see every day from you. So I guess what does that indicate in terms of how seriously you were taking the match and how strong of a player Lenier is and what a tough opponent he is for you?
Well, I mean, the first thing is the first game. There's no reason not to go down on the clock. So I'm up a pawn. Like in the worst case, I'll always be able to bail out and make a draw. So there's no reason not to use that time. Since I'm the one who has extra pawn. In the second game, that was the Berlin game. Yeah, I was just trying to remember what I had prepared for the candidates. I mean, I know there are a couple lines with this Bishop B2 or Bishop E5, and I was just making sure that I didn't mess up the move order. I think what I did was correct with Bishop E5. I know there's another one where you take on B2, then you go back to E5, but I think what I did was correct. And it was another position that once it's simplified, it was very simple to play. So I think in terms of first games, that was fine. In terms of the third game, honestly, maybe this will sound a little bit arrogant, but if I hadn't started feeling the need to use the restroom somewhere around like move 10, I think I probably would have won this game and we wouldn't have had a fourth game, honestly, because when I played this H4 move, for some reason I was expecting G4 and then I was going to go Bishop D6, but I can simply play the other order with Bishop D6, Knight D6 takes, Queen D6, H4, G4, G3, and I'm just a little bit better and it's very easy to play. So yeah, it happens. And then fourth game obviously was very choppy, but I think I just made better decisions in the critical moments.
That was going to be part of my question. Is one of the things Robert and I said today, and one of the things that obviously gets said about this highest echelon like that you bring when you play, especially in these rapid and blitz events, is defensive just ability to buckle down, play some rerouting moves, play quickly, not overthink the position. Do you think that is the single most important skill to make it to a final 8, for example, out of 64 players? Is that really what it comes down to? Everybody has preparation, everybody's good tactically, but when it comes down to playing some of these unpleasant positions, it seemed like you were just unbeatable today. The position could have been slightly worse, could have been maybe much better for Lenier, but he wasn't just going to beat you at all.
I mean, I think it highlights the difference between classical chess and then rapid and blitz. I mean, there's a reason when you play classical chess that you actually spend like 4 or 5 hours looking at stuff before a game as opposed to rapid and blitz. Because if I played the way that I played today in classical, I think I would have lost the last game specifically. So that does highlight a big difference. I mean, I think ultimately, yeah, it comes down to the critical moments when you're playing rapid and blitz, who makes less blunders. But also, considering that I knew I was worse, I started trying to just play Nepo style and just play fast. Unfortunately, I think my moves for the most part were pretty good. And again, as he started getting lower and lower, it became too difficult to play with no time on the clock. And also, I mean, when you're playing with a 2-second increment, I mean, you do have an increment, but that increment really goes by quickly. So if you get to like 30 seconds, it is almost as though you can make a couple of quick moves, and just like that, you have 30 seconds. But with a 2-second increment, it's very tough. And yeah, I thought I made good decisions when I was under pressure for the most part, and I'm very happy.
Yeah, and Hikaru, you obviously are a world-renowned streamer and, of course, beloved. Now you're chess is taking you over the board again. You're going to Iceland at the end of October, then to Canada at the first week of November. Does that excite you to be playing, in more and more over the board events in addition to your streaming?
It's fun to play chess. Let's leave it at that. But I will say, I am actually really excited to go to Iceland. I haven't been there in I think 18 years, so I am really excited to go to Reykjavik. That should be a lot of fun. How I do that and then go to Toronto, I mean, I'll figure all that out later. But it is great because at the end of the day, I feel like with both the 960, but then also this event, really the main goal was make it to the end. Like at this point, like sure, I can lose the next match and I won't really care. I just wanted to make sure that I get to go and play chess. So it's all good.
Yeah, do you prefer over the board? Do you prefer fully online, or do you prefer traveling to a location and playing on a computer in front of another guy physically?
I mean, I have to say I don't know what the format is. I've heard both. Like I think I heard from Fabiano that we're playing on computer screens. I think I heard from Leonard Oots or Otes, however you pronounce his name, that we're playing on DGT boards. So I really don't have any idea what's going on exactly. So I'll just see how it goes. But I do think that after long periods of time, it is a little bit odd playing on the board. I definitely felt it when I played in St. Louis in the Rapid and Blitz. Maybe it's about a month ago now. It seemed a little bit odd playing over the board where it wasn't Blitz chess. So I think it depends on what I've been playing a lot of recently.
Sounds good. Yeah, go Robert.
Yeah, no, I mean, Hikaru, your schedule always is busy. You're seemingly mopping up events left and right, including a double Title Tuesday victory. So, always great to see you participating. And this was a tremendous match. We heard from you saying, you could have done a few things better here and there, but ultimately you are the person moving through, and it was a great showing. So congratulations, Hikaru.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Yes,
all right.
Hikaru.
Well, Hikaru Nakamura has made his way through against Lenier Dominguez. We'll show you the bracket once more. He takes down Rodrigo Vasquez, David Navarra, and Lenier Dominguez. So Levy, he's always a powerhouse, but Hikaru just showed his best chess when he needed it today.
Yeah, I like how he and Lenier are the same seed. I know they became the same person toward the end. And then they emerged. It's like 2 versus 2, so only number one emerges. Listen, Hikaru was the favorite in this matchup. Just like in tennis, we have certain areas where an individual is kind of predicted to be the winner. And he did his job. He took care of business. There was ups, there was downs. He was dominant in some matches, and this match was super, super close. Well, now we'll get to see him in Toronto. That's really the big show.
For sure. And since we're speaking of these great matches, we also saw Dmitry Andreikin take down Fabiano Caruana. So as we dive a little bit more into that match, let's take a closer look, because it's time for a new segment we like to call the Brave Move of the Day, in which we highlight a key move or set of moves to decide the outcome of the match between Andreikin and Caruana. And it was a draw in game 1. But Levy, here in game 2, we can see that both players down under 10 seconds. Caruana makes the move king to g6, and Andreikin has his eyes on the prize here with no time on the clock.
Yeah, he uncorks bishop to e4, which overloads the light squared bishop from the defense of the promotion and the defense of the e4 square. If you take the bishop, obviously white is promoting. If you do not, which ultimately happened in the game, the bishop is unable to deal with the consequences of promotion, and Dmitry went on to win. And this was really the beginning of the end for Fabiano. You could argue that it was the beginning of the end, not just in this game, of the entire match. But I don't know. I don't know if bishop e4 was the brave move of the day, or Fabiano's king g6 was a little too brave. But yes, bishop e4 sealed the deal, not just in this game, but it really felt overall. And Mr. Fair Chess on YouTube, or Dmitry Andreikin, as he goes by, punched his ticket to Toronto by winning this game and then the next one.
Yeah, it certainly was the critical moment, because it allowed him to take a lead, and he did not relinquish that lead. And that's our Brave Move of the Day. Remember, it's time to make your move from Chrome to Brave. Try it now at brave.com/chess. So, Levy, we have 2 players making their way through to Toronto, in addition to the 2 that we saw yesterday. So we know Hikaru Nakamura is up top, awaiting the winner of Duda and Serrana. Wesley So will take on Dmitry Andreikin. Levon Aronian will take on the winner of Dingley Ren and Nihal Sarin. And then we have the upper right-hand side. I mean, no one has made it through to the round of 8 from those two groups.
No, that's sort of like a foreign land to me, as we see Nepo with Rajabov. That, of course, is also another 1 and 2 matchup. We've had 3 of those. The strangest matchup gotta be Giri Pankratov. I've got no idea what to expect. Giri has been seemingly like in the Matrix, just dodging everything and just being incredible. And his matchup against Raonic really made me think that he is in peak form in this event. It wasn't even close, but how is he going to fare against the man that has taken down a 5-time world champion, as well as the world rapid champion? I don't know. I really don't know. It seems like anytime Pankratov sits down to play, you gotta maybe look at him as a potential favorite in a matchup. We'll see what Giri comes with and how his prep is. And I don't know. That one is the one that's up in the air the most for me.
Yeah, he started the event as one of those kind of anonymous type of 2650 players, but Pavel Pankratov, he's a name that people will remember after he beat Vichy and Nordibek. But we have these matches on Wednesday, October 5th. That is 2 days from now, 9 a.m. Pacific time. Mark these down in your calendars. Will Anish Giri and Jan Krzysztof Duda, the number 1 seeds in their group, will they make it through? Or will the upstarts in Pavel Pankratov and Alexei Sarana, will they continue their upset streaks and make their ticket to Canada and face off against the other elite players? So, Levy, I mean, it's been a fantastic show. I mean, really some great matchups. And not only do we have the 2 coming up on this coming Wednesday, we have 2 more the following Wednesday. So the round of 16 continues. It is all exciting.
Oh, it's super exciting. It's a shame we have to wait a little bit longer for these players. But listen, people have commitments. They have to play in tournaments. And while the Chess.com Global Championship, brought to you by Brave, is quite an exciting event to play, over the board still for many of these players takes precedence. But yeah, I'm super pumped for those matchups. I'm super pumped for Nepo and Rajabov, for Dingley Ren and Nihal Sarin. Robert, as always, this was a pleasure. And I don't know what your thoughts are on the upcoming matchups, but I have been more than satisfied, and I am eagerly looking forward to the remaining matchups in the round of 16, but also now finding out who's going to play who in Toronto.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting Wednesday, or I should say Wednesdays, because our next 2 Wednesdays will be jam-packed with action here at the Chess.com Global Championship presented by Brave. And well, before we sign off, we do want to give one last major shout-out to our presenting sponsor, our friends at Brave. They will stick with us through Toronto for the entirety of the CGC. So thank you so much for all of that. But we are going to sign off for now. It is Hikaru Nakamura. It is Dmitry Andreikin. They will be joined by 4 more players in the next 2 Wednesdays. And, of course, Wesley So, Levon Aronian. And they made their way through yesterday. So now we say goodbye. See you Wednesday for more from the Chess.com Global Championship presented by Brave.